Sigmar offers nothing but lies and doomed ambition. Only in the worship of the dark gods can a mortal soul truly ascend to greatness.
Welcome, lords and heroes.
Hello from a table at Death's Door Inn. This is Lords and Heroes, a show about a gamer's journey into the mortal realms and the detours that happen along the way. This episode is Excitement in the 8-Points. My name's Adan, and I'm a San Francisco Bay Area gamer who's currently living in the Valley of the Sun.
And this is Rob, desert dweller and gamer in said Valley of the Sun.
Rob, thanks so much for being here.
Oh,
this
my
is
pleasure.
Awesome, dude.
I'm really happy to be here. It's really an honor.
It's this is the first episode we're recording in this era of COVID where we're actually in person.
Yeah.
And so you kind of have to look at the photos on the Facebook page, but what I did was I took a picture frame and I used the plastic from the picture frame and I used a couple clamps onto the table and we created our own like in-between spit shield.
Yep, it almost looks like one of those prison where you
Exactly
get on the
right.
phone
Yeah.
in between.
Yeah.
It looks like
it looks like we're visiting each other in prison. And then the microphone you had to, basically decontaminate everything with wipes and all that stuff. And luckily, when I bought the stuff for the show, the foam covers for the mics came in a big packet of mixed colors. And so what I'm doing is just pick your own color and then keep it in your own plastic bag, and that's your mic cover. So.
Yep. And I had to pick Ultramarines blue, represent. So.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to let that go. Without comment, I think. So for people who don't know Rob, and I talked to you once, I think, on one of the previous episodes when we were talking about doing the 3-on-a-match. But Rob lives here in the Valley and kind of got me into the scene here, especially with Age of Sigmar in the Valley. I very much appreciate the welcoming attitude you and Alex and the other folks had for bringing me in, and so I appreciate that. But the other thing is that I wanted to mention is that there's two big features about why I have you on the show. One's bigger than the other. The first one, the big feature, is you are like a lore Rain Man. I mean, for want of a better term, I mean, you're like an encyclopedia, the Wikipedia of lore. You remember what books things are from and all that kind of stuff, and it's crazy. The second reason, which was almost the reason I didn't bring you on, is that you're also a master of puns.
Oh, yep.
So some of those might creep in here, and it's okay.
Oh, I already have some planned. I'm sorry for everybody at home.
I'm sure you do. But no, thanks very much for jumping in. So this episode is going to be a deep dive into the rules for Warcry, which is a skirmish game set in the Age of Sigmar universe. We did something similar to this for Underworlds in episodes 7 and 15, and for Blitz Bowl in episode 12. So we're going to be doing pretty heavy-duty deep dive into the rules. But the cool thing about having Rob on here is Rob knows all the lore, so he'll be able to sprinkle that in here and there as we go. So people seem to like these deep dive episodes. We've had people request several times for us to cover Warcry, so here we go. For folks who have not listened before, where have you been? But no, we have a Facebook community, great community, lots of people there with some excellent work that they're showing, lots of good conversations. It's a real chill group. You can find us on iTunes, and we really would like to have some reviews on iTunes. That's how people help find the show, and so it's really helpful. If you have a minute to give us a review on iTunes, I would really appreciate that. Teespring.com is where you get all your Lords and Heroes swag. That's T-E-E, spring.com. And we have a contest. This is the last episode for our contest. We'll talk more about that at the end of the show. So the first thing we got to talk about here is what's on the table. So when we agreed to meet here at Death's Door Inn, I didn't realize that one of the reasons that it's at Death's Door is because they don't have any alcohol here.
Oh, no.
So there's no beer.
Oh, no.
There's no nothing. And Rob, you don't drink. I know that. So that wasn't such a big deal for you. But I was like, oh, man, I'm going to have a beer. I'm going to have some tacos. And
I got horchata.
I know. You got horchata. Yeah. So Yeah, so I've got not beer.
Is that Sprite or water?
Yeah, it's just water. And but I do have street tacos.
Yeah, those are tasty.
The street tacos here are pretty good. So that part of it's really boring. But yeah, so we've got lots of gear on the table. We've got our little spit shield on the table, and so that we got that going. And we're sitting out on the back patio of the Death's Door Inn. And what you may have already noticed is that when people's order come up, they call it out over the big loudspeaker. So that's going to be fun as we go along. So, Rob, what do you have on the table?
Well,
hobby-wise.
Well, hobby-wise, I've been doing a lot of painting and building for Batman the Miniatures game by Night Models.
Night Models, yeah.
Yep, really into it. I ordered some terrain from ttcombat.com. Really great site, lots of terrain. They've got stuff that could be used for Age of Sigmar, 40K, all that great stuff. Other than that, I've been just painting like the Joker. I've got a bunch of different models, and then working on my Black Legion and coming up on the Sylvaneth models for 3 on a match coming later.
But you painted a lot of the Batman models. I
Yeah.
mean, like a lot of them.
Oh yeah, they're a really thematic, fun model that's just easy to get done, easy to get into.
The thing that really interests me about that is how they were able to secure the licenses for all the different versions of Batman.
Well, yeah,
I
especially,
mean, they've got like Dark Knight, they've got the animated Batman, they've got the 1960s Batman.
Yep.
They've got, if you can think of a Batman, they've pretty
Yep.
much got it. And what's the new one that we were just looking at?
Oh, the one that we were just looking at the other day was the Batman Who Laughs.
Yeah.
It's
the death metal Batman.
Yep, Psycho Batman that got injected with the Joker venom. So that's he's creepy. Him and his little
Yeah.
Roblins.
And it was funny because you posted that in our little internal group, and then that same day, Comixology had a thing about death metal Batman.
Yep.
And so I was like, pretty cool. But I mean, the models look amazing.
Oh yeah, they're great. Then they're really fun to paint. The only downside of them is they're a little soft kind of plastic resin.
Yeah, the resin. Yeah.
But once you learn how to build those and clean them,
Yeah.
the hammers don't break, like little fiddly parts,
Right.
like ears and stuff. If you
Right.
drop them, it's not going to snap.
So, what is your number one tip for dealing with that kind of stuff in assembly?
Have a sharp hobby knife. That's the best thing to do.
Okay.
Is have a sharp hobby knife and just make sure you got all that flash off.
I bought my Night models a long time ago. All of mine are metal.
Yeah, those are the old guys.
So yeah, in fact I don't even know if I think I have the current rule book. I'm not quite sure, but your stuff looks very enticing, and I may get caught on another detail here pretty quick.
Appreciate it.
And then you were telling me before we started recording that you actually have some other stuff on the table in terms of a game you got to play.
Oh yeah,
What's up with
Warhammer.
that?
Warhammer 40K. I got to play with a buddy of mine over the last couple days.
And we're not talking about tabletop simulator. You're talking about
No, I'm talking
in person.
in person. Yeah, I managed to get myself one of the portable tabletop tables. I can't remember the
The
company.
Alpha game table.
No, it's the other one. It's from the Czech Republic. It's
Oh, okay. Yeah. I remember.
urbanmats.com.
What was it called?
urbanmats.eu.
Okay,
It was
yeah.
theirs. And we played the game yesterday. It was a brilliant game. I couldn't score for the life of me. Over 5 turns, I had no points scored from the Maelstrom objectives. I lost awfully to my buddy Dave Rojo's Space Wolves, but I had a blast. It was that great. Not a single bit of frustration.
Oh, it was Rojo?
Yep, it was Rojo.
Oh, okay. So, needless to say, you didn't win.
Oh, absolutely not. I got
But you had a good
trashed.
time.
Oh yeah, it was fun. It was
Yeah.
great.
Now, the Maelstrom cards, did you do the one where you create your own deck?
We did, and we didn't really get to that part though. It was just jumping in, but it was the new chapter approved set where you have
Right.
a hand of 5.
Right.
But the one we got, and he kind of messed me up a bit, was the mission called Disruptive Tactics,
Okay.
where you before you draw any cards, you place 3 face up on the table,
Oh,
and your
right.
opponent gets
Your
to get
opponent
rid of
gets- yeah,
one.
gets rid of one,
And he
yeah.
just every turn was able to just stop
Yeah.
me from getting any.
Now, when Tyler Lee ran a thing at Desert Sky when they were still running tabletop games, he used that thing where you can make your own deck because it came out in a White Dwarf.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I think it's a really great way to use the Maelstrom
Absolutely.
cards.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. You got to actually play a real-life, in-person game.
Yep.
Anything else on the table?
Not right now. Just waiting for 3 on a match with my Sylvaneth.
Yeah. Well, so I've been working on my 3 in a match stuff because I'm doing Stormcast Eternals. So I got Lena Stormsire and 5 Vanguard Hunters and 6 Ether Wings assembled and primed. And I'm kind of doing those, what do they call it, sub-assemblies?
So yeah.
Because the cloaks on the Night Hunters are hard to... I'm not sure how I would paint it with the cloaks on them. So
The Vanguard.
The Vanguard
They're a
Hunters, yeah.
nightmare. Yeah.
So I left those off. I'm going to use a kind of a black and silver, red and cream scheme. I can't remember the name of the chamber, that Anthony showed me how to do with using contrast paints.
Nice.
So I'm going to do that. You start with a black prime, and then you zenithal it with lead belcher. And you go back in and paint all the robes and stuff with wraithbone, and then you use contrast
to get that
fill in
color.
the colors. So yeah, it looks like it's a pretty decent way to go. And so as soon as I stop procrastinating, I may actually get to it.
I don't blame you. I've painted Stormcast, and they, especially those Vanguard, there's a little bit of detail that you will miss and get in there, so I don't blame you.
And then I finished the skins and scales on my Saurus Knight Riders. The cold ones are done. I just need to finish the weapons, and I'm waiting on my Dragon Forge bases so I can base them all up. So I haven't really painted the basing part of it, because what I'm going to do with the Dragon Forge bases, I'm going to actually attach plastic aquarium foliage, and I'm going to paint that with the airbrush. So waiting on that. I acquired a bunch of technology pieces so that we're going to be able to record with all 4 people when we do 3 on a match, and that was a research project in and of itself. But the cool thing is my son has a degree in that stuff, so I'd send him pictures and say, okay, do I buy this one or that one? He's like, neither one. You want this other one?
Yeah.
Dude, you're costing me an extra $100. He goes, no, really. If you're recording with 4 people, this is the one you want. Okay, fine. Well, what headphones do I want? He says, you want these? Like, oh, no, I'm not spending $120 per headset. No. So I got the cheap headset. Sorry. But, yeah, so that actually was interesting, and learning to use all that stuff. I used the mic and the setup that he helped me with when I recorded with Carl the other day on the Independent Characters. I think it sounded pretty good, so I'm looking forward to that. I was pretty excited. Also been playing D&D online with my kids.
Via Skype or?
Via Zoom.
Zoom, nice.
Yeah. My youngest son is the GM, and then his fiance and my other son and his wife and I are all playing.
That's fantastic.
And so it's really cool. It's the first time we've ever done it as a big group like that, and so it's pretty slick, and get to stay in touch that way and stuff with one guy in Pittsburgh and the other guy in LA. Mm-hmm. Right? It's nice to be able to keep up. All right, so is that what we saw on the table?
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right, well, then we'll be right back. All right, we're back. We're talking about Warcry. So, what is the game? Warcry is a tabletop skirmish war game in which 2 or more players control rival warbands of Citadel miniatures, each with their own unique weapons, warriors, and abilities.
Yep, it's set in the Eightpoints, formerly the Allpoints, Archeon's personal realm between all realms, where the warbands fight for him to notice them and elevate them.
So the idea is that they want a Chaos God to figure out who they are.
Pretty much, yep.
Now, is it Archeon they're looking for, or any of the Chaos Gods?
Archeon specifically, they worship him as the harbinger of chaos, depending on their own personal religion, which is something I'm really happy GW brought back, is the idea of chaos having multiple entities and multiple facets of what it might be.
Right.
So some people may worship Be'lakor, who is a demon prince, as a god.
Right.
Archeon himself is worshipped as a god.
Yeah, I was listening to one of the designers on Stormcast, and he was saying that for a lot of these lower-level warbands, like the ones we're going to be talking about here, they're not even aware of the 4 major gods. Yep. Mm-hmm. It doesn't occur to them that there's these 4 overarching gods. They just know, hey, this dude's a badass.
Yep.
And so we worship him.
Yep. And for some, they don't even know chaos as chaos.
As
for them,
chaos, right.
It's the ruinous power,
right.
the primordial,
right.
primordial truth from 40K,
right.
or the Crow guys worship them as I can't remember their names right now, but worship them as the Great Gatherer.
Right. The Corvus Cabal, right?
Yeah,
We'll talk about them later.
Cabal.
Yeah. Yeah, I really think it's kind of cool, and it really gives for a lot of leeway for narrative storytelling and people creating their own war bands and stuff like that. Another thing was interesting to me when I was kind of diving into this, because when I first saw the game, I thought, oh, it's set in the 8 points. It's this little, there's 8 gates and then there's a little arena in the middle. No,
it's a realm.
It's a realm, and they call it a, quote, vast and endlessly varied land.
Yep, it's basically, if you look at the spokes on a wheel, if you've got the realms, this is the center point.
Right.
And so you've got a little bit of each and a little bit of varied areas on there.
Okay.
Especially
and
being tainted by chaos.
And then for this book, the core book, it's actually set in Bloodwind Spoils. Bloodwind Spoils, and it's actually just 1/8 of the entire thing. And so it's, again, really cool.
Yep.
Just like with all the other realms, they're only showing you little slices of it, so you can come up with anything you want that is actually in the 8 points. So that's pretty slick.
Yep.
And then you were telling me about the connection between the 2 core factions that were in the core box when it first got released and its relationship to the 8 points. Why don't you talk to me about that?
It's absolutely really fantastic and kind of a little clever thing on their part. is in the rule book, if you read it, where they are is the Bloodwind Spoil. It's between Gur and Shaman, and there's 2 highways that link it, Gur being the realm of beasts, and Shaman being the realm of metal. So what do we have in the starter set?
Untamed Beasts.
And the Iron Golems.
Yeah.
So they're meeting right there between those highways because those are the closest warbands to that area.
That is pretty slick. And so, and then in the middle of the whole thing is the Baron Spire.
Yep, think like the Dark Tower from Stephen King, anything like that. It holds the realms, basically holds the realms there. It's the Linchpin. It's his.
It's like holding it all together.
Yeah, it helps hold it together, and it's it's taken by Archeon. It's his personal abode that and then above it is a giant chaos warp portal. Just spinning in midair up there. You can see into the realm of chaos and ultimate oblivion above his tower.
From his penthouse.
Yep, from his penthouse.
So it's a hell of a view from the balcony.
Yep, and that's where he regularly tells the Chaos Gods to go pound sand. He hates them so much.
So, I said this before, and Carl didn't agree with me, but I see a lot of parallels between Archeon and Abaddon.
To be very, very frank, I think Abaddon, however you want to pronounce it, is really based on Archeon now.
It does feel like it, doesn't it? Because he also kind of like gives a flying whatever to the Chaos Gods.
Yeah, but if you remember, he used to be kind of like Failbadon, like Failbaddon. He used to be that guy that was kind of a joke and kind of severe and angry all the time. But then Archeon came out and they developed him.
Yeah.
And then you saw...
I like the way they retconned him.
Yeah, you see people take what seemed to me like really aspects of Archeon and go, well, let's do this. Because Archeon, for a while there, was just, he's the true Everchosen. Like, Abaddon was kind of, okay, whatever. You can't touch Archeon. But then they kind of retconned
So is
Abaddon.
Archeon closer to Abaddon or Horus?
I think Archeon, personally, would probably trounce them both if you had to ask
No,
me.
I mean in terms of if you were going to make a parallel.
His parallel? Probably Abaddon as he is now because he doesn't.
As he is now.
Yeah, he's not a puppet. Horus was a puppet in the end.
Yeah, I love it. So, okay. Sorry, I went on a tangent there. So what is the object of the game? The object of the game is to achieve the victory conditions selected for the given battle. Make sense?
Yep.
And as with Age of Sigmar and 40K, there's 3 ways to play. There's open play, narrative, and match play. Now, in Warcry, they structure those a little differently than they do in 40K and Age of Sigmar, but they do use the same names. We'll kind of go into that a little bit more later.
Yep.
And so what are the components? So we're not going to talk about the original core box because that's not available anymore. But I'm going to talk about the components that you need to play the game. There's a core book. It's 160 pages, and it's just jam-packed.
It's a beautiful book,
with
too.
stuff, yeah. The basic rules themselves are only about 12 pages. Okay, so that's cool. It's about the same, as 40K and Age of Sigmar. They try and keep it kind of simple, but there's a lot of stuff in that book. The battlefield, which is going to be 22 by 30, what Jervis calls a kitchen table game. And again, this is a focus that Games Workshop has, is being able to play on a more regular table.
Genius.
Right? Yeah, I think it's
great.
great.
Genius.
You need terrain. You have battle plan cards. We'll talk about those in a little bit. You have to have at least 2 warbands. Each warband also has cards for their individual model stats, and then the warband itself has an abilities card.
Yep.
There's tokens to mark different statuses and conditions, and of course objectives, and then dice and rulers.
Yep.
Right? Now, there are a lot of third-party, or some third-party folks who are actually making tokens for this. I saw one, Art of War, I think, has a really cool little plastic dial they just came out with, where, because as we'll talk about later, it's not unusual to have a fighter with 30 wounds.
Yeah.
And so this dial, you can actually go 10s, 20s, and 30s plus the 1s all on the same dial. So that's kind of cool. All right, so what are the basic elements? The warbands are seeking out to achieve victory conditions based on the given scenario. And they achieve this by holding objectives and or protecting key fighters and or killing off enemy fighters.
The second scenario are honestly the best. I love those so much. It's because, especially when it forces you to go towards the middle. Love those.
Yeah. And it's interesting because sometimes it'll be, designate this fighter, don't let that fighter die.
Like, hey, everybody kill the leader, please don't.
Yeah, exactly, And in some of the games, you know who that marked guy is, and in some of the games you don't. And so that's kind of cool. There's a lot of variety here, as you'll see. So what are the factions and warbands? There were 6 initial warbands that were never before seen models from GW, and these were these little societies that live within the 8 points. And So think of Chaos Warriors, and then go down to Chaos Marauders, and then go down. These guys are lower than that.
Yep.
These guys are real. I mean, in a Slaves of Darkness army, these guys are the total chaff.
Yep. They're the ones the Marauders laugh at.
Right, and basically, they're the ones whose souls and their existence don't really matter to anybody.
No
in the
one
mortal
cares.
realms. But because they are so detailed in and of themselves, they're really interesting.
Yep.
First one is the Iron Golems, and their key phrase is, "We create war."
Yeah,
What's up with them?
These guys, I love these guys. These were one of the ones when I first saw the set I didn't think I'd like because they looked like deep sea divers. Their story is amazing, though.
So these are the guys that have these big like bell helmet things
the
on
bell
their head.
helmets, but they have if you've played Iron Hands, anything like that, the flesh is weak. That's what these guys are.
Okay.
They're from the realm of metal.
Okay.
And they use
Shaman or Chaman or whatever.
Hee. They use a sun dragon that they've captured in their own home fortress to forge their weapons.
Now, see, this is what's so crazy to me. These guys are like total
chumps.
Yeah. And they have a freaking sun dragon.
Welcome to Age of Sigmar, where skeletons can kill a dragon, right?
Yeah.
They
I used to have a high elf army where I had a guy riding a sun dragon, I think.
Yeah, that was the ancient dragon, the most powerful one in the High Elf Codex, and these guys just
make some weapons for us. That's awesome.
They believe that those forge fires that they use embody chaos, which again they don't really have a name for.
Right.
But that fire that forges them, and that they use
because it's so random and
and it forges them into something stronger because steel endures, metal endures.
Interesting.
And so they use that and pride themselves on forging the weapons for their armies. And that's something about Warcry and these war bands that's fantastic, is each over war band, kind of like the gangs for Necromunda,
right,
do something for Archeon.
Right.
The war bands don't necessarily, but the individual war bands going out trying to get his attention don't.
Right.
But the houses that they're from, the tribes,
right, they do.
They do, and that's something great about them. But
that's
they
very
forge his weapons.
All right, so the next one is the Untamed Beast, and these were the two that were in the original box, was the Iron Golems and the Untamed Beast. The Untamed Beasts, their key phrase is "Hunt the Hunter."
Yep, they're from Gur, which always cracks me up. That's the realm of beasts. Gur, yep. They're the complete...
as a pun guy, I thought you would like that.
Yeah, I love it so much. They're the opposite of the Iron Golems, and basically it's like someone copy-pasted the Bone Splitters and tagged it on Chaos and made it somehow worse. So everything about them is for beasts. Everything comes from beasts, and they only hunt carnivores. If you're an herbivore, they'll just walk past you. They only hunt carnivores.
So they don't go bunny foo-foos.
No bunny foo-foos. No, they'll ignore the rabbit and go straight for the fox. They kill anything that eats meat to eat it, to turn it into weapons, to absorb its cunning and strength, and then hope nobody from PETA's listening, because they will then ritually rip that thing's soul out of its body and attach it to them, so that its strength and endurance and its soul is always with them, powering their ferocity.
So this is interesting. So one of the features about them is they quote-unquote hate civilization.
Absolutely.
But they have their own society.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So it kind of reminds me of... Well, I won't get into it, but yes, I just think it's a very interesting little ironic twist that they have their own society, but they hate civilization.
Yep, it's very tribal, but they're like right there at the cusp where they hate
some
themselves.
of my times in Berkeley. I'll just say that. So some of the other ones. So the next one is the Corvus Cabal. These are the guys we were talking about before. They very much reminded me of kind of a Raven Guard, Night Lords kind of look thing.
Yep. If you play a rogue in D&D, that's them.
Right. So Corvus Cabal, pick the corpse clean is their key phrase.
Yep. They worship Chaos as the Great Gatherer. It's a giant crow effigy that they have that's sitting above treasure.
And are they from a particular realm?
Ulgu, the Realm of Shadow.
Realm of Shadow. All right.
Yep. And they must, whenever they kill something, they have to take a prize from whatever they kill and bring it back to the shrine.
Okay.
Or that warrior gets thrown from the tallest peak. If you don't bring back a tribute,
which is interesting because ravens do that.
Yep.
Ravens are always carrying little doodads back to their nest. That's interesting.
Nest, and they favor high areas and being able to swoop down from on high, which is why you see the model of one of their champions has got the big old
wings.
Yep. But they're and then they live in the higher areas, and they string barbed wire and will leave trappings hanging from it and warnings to anybody: hey, don't climb up here. This isn't for you.
Interesting. Well, it's interesting also because there are actual game mechanics in Warcry for jumping down on people.
Yep.
So that's kind of cool.
And their power sheet has has a bunch of that on it. Yep.
That's awesome. So the abilities card, Rob.
Oh,
Their power sheet.
Power
You're messing
sheet.
up all my terminology. All right, the next thing is the Cypher Lords. The Cypher Lords, their tag phrase is "Let madness reign."
Yep.
These guys, just like the Iron Golems, kind of reminded me of Khorne worship. These guys kind of came across really harsh. I mean, hard as almost like Tzeentch worshippers, the way that
Yeah.
they look.
Yep.
But they aren't.
No, they're very Lovecraftian. They're on the outside, they're pretty and very enlightened. They're from
Right.
Hysh, the realm of light. So their city looks beautiful on the outside, but when you go
Right.
inside, smoke and mirrors, insanity, madness. To the core, they are evil. They are insane. They love chemical illusions like gas grenades, like think Scarecrow, magic trickery. They're actually spy masters for Archeon. And they've got this really cool story idea where they are all around the 8 points. They've got little silver and gold eyes that are in buildings and mountains everywhere. That's a camera system.
Oh, really? I
Yeah.
thought it was embedded on them. It's actually they put it on
It's
other
all
things.
everywhere.
Oh,
it's
wow.
everywhere, and they're watching for him and reporting to him. So
That's interesting.
You think you're talking smack about Archeon behind his back. Well, how does he know? Well,
He's
there
got
it
eyes.
is.
He
He's
literally
got
has eyes everywhere.
Yep.
And then the thing that's kind of cool, where it kind of gets that across in the models, is one of the models looks like he's kind of reaching around to fight, and he's got a third arm
Yep.
with a knife in it
Yep.
that's up underneath. And like the first time I actually saw the model in person, I was like, I had never saw that before,
Hey,
which
the-
is kind of intentional, right? You're not
Yep.
supposed to see it till the last minute.
It's pretty disarming.
The next one is the Unmade, and their little tagline is "Agony is our gift."
All right, I think somebody at GW needs to stop watching Hellraiser. These guys are terrifying. They're from Shyish, the realm of death,
Yes.
and they are horrifying.
Yeah.
They're obsessed with pain and torment, which is worse because everybody thought they're Slanesh worshippers.
Yep.
They're not. They just love causing pain, and they believe that chaos is worshipped through pain and suffering and fear. So it's not
This
even
is like Hellraiser on crack.
on crack.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't even have the excuse of worshiping Slanesh. This is just chaos undivided causing pain.
So
And
this next part, I can't even. I would never buy this warband.
no, they're horrifying. So if you look at the models, you'll notice
Yeah.
something very interesting on their belts. That's because they ritually cut their faces off and wear them on their
Oh my
belt buckles.
gosh.
And then as they advance through their ranks more and more, they ritually cut more and more pieces of their bodies off and replace them with blades. Like, that's why the leader of their warband looks like a giant walking scarecrow. That's because that person is a quadruple amputee with blades for limbs. And the fluff for it is that it's constantly, I think it's called the Blessed One. It's constantly just spinning around at maddening speed like a scarecrow from
Right.
hell, just laughing its butt off as it's slicing
but it's
people.
like totally in pain.
Yep.
That's the kind of thing that would just make me. I have nightmares if I try to paint that thing.
Yeah.
The next one's the Splintered Fang. One cut, one kill.
Yep. These guys are from the realm of life. These guys they worship chaos as snake gods.
These are really, to me, these are my favorite models.
Same.
The guys with the snakes and the poison and that kind of stuff.
They're very Greek, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Very,
Very
Greek.
cool.
They have that mindset of fighting too, where it's very heroic, but
Right.
but they don't consider the poison a dishonor like most
Right.
people will, and they love poison. They worship the snakes, and as they get older and stronger, they'll keep poisoning themselves with snake
Right, to
venom
build an immunity.
To build an immunity.
Yeah.
And the higher you get, you might start mutating and having fangs or scales
Oh, wow.
and having a poison glands of your own.
Well, I
And-
actually over years I built up a resistance to iocane powder myself.
Really?
The Spire Tyrants. The Spire Tyrants, their tagline is "We are His chosen."
These guys are the gladiator champions of the Varanspire fighting pits. They're the standard Chaos Undivided worshippers. If you've seen a Marauder, you know what these guys are.
Right. So
I-
basically, they say that they're the chosen ones because they're the ones selected to go to the pits.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, they're the ones that go deep.
Right.
And the cool part of their lore is they form partnerships. And that's what their war bands are. There's mutual partnerships to watch their backs because this is
Right.
chaos and ascension is through blood, and blood usually involves trampling the next closest guy.
Right.
So they find these warbands and they become incredibly disciplined and cohesive. I wish there was a little bit more fluffing them out, but they do have something that all these warbands have and all these things have that I think GW again has really fleshed out, and you see it in the Iron Golems too, is they've done it for Chaos and they've done it for Order. As you see all stripes in these warbands. You've got dwarves, you've got what's kind of insinuated to be elves, you've got men, women, so you've got all these races and everything. It don't matter. You're flying the 8 points. And I think that's something that is really strong in these warbands, is you really see that. And I think the Spire Tyrants do it a little bit better because you can see that on the model a little bit more.
Yeah, some of the other ones, they're modified to such a point, like those like the Hellraiser guys, man. You can't tell what it was before. And then there's the last one, which we haven't actually seen the models in the wild. We saw it in the preview finally. But the last one's called the Scions of the Flame, and their tagline is the flame within. And we saw these in the GW preview. And so what are they all about?
I bet people heard me scream like a little girl when these models were released. Oh man, these guys are all warrior priests. And they, every single one is a priest. They want to cleanse the realm with the fires of chaos, who they see as a manifestation of the fires and actually the realm of fire.
So they're from the realm of fire.
So if you hear missionaries knocking on your door and smell something burning, don't open it. They believe ritual burning makes one stronger and will go to any lengths to control and be one with the flame. They eat actually fire beasts, including the hearts of magmavores and salamanders. So those things that the fire slayers are on, they want those guys. They want to kill those guys. The magma droths, they consider them a prize that they want to eat. If you eat these hearts though, and you're unworthy, whatever that means, you're incinerated. Otherwise, you just light on fire, because that's worlds better than being incinerated. They want to help Archeon spread the fiery apocalypse by becoming his living torches to just burn it all down.
And the models, they kind of really bring that across, the ones they previewed. So
they didn't start the fire, but they'll keep it burning.
Oh, I knew it was coming. So those are the basic Warcry warbands, the ones that are basically at home in the 8 points. Now, there's also rules in the core rulebook for several established Age of Sigmar factions, along with the lore for why they're there. All right, and I'm just going to go through the different factions, and then Rob will talk a little bit about why they're there. So there's the Night Hunt, the Stormcast Eternals, the Legions of Nagash, the Gloomspite Gits, the Idanith Deepkin, the Flesh Eater Courts, the Iron Jaws, the Daughters of Cain, and the Bone Splitters. Now, most of these made sense to me. The Idanith and the Stormcast did not. Tell me a little bit about why all these guys are there.
So when they explained why, I think it was in the Heroes, the Champions book that came after the main rule book. It really showed when the All Points was taken by Chaos. Not everybody got out. And there's oceans and everything in the All Points. So a lot of these people that were left behind have been left to fight for themselves and scavenge.
And I think this is the interesting thing that I really missed, was just how big the 8 points is.
So you've got these guys that are like the Idaneth Deepkin. Well, they need souls to put into their children. So if you see the eels coming out in Warcry, well, that's a war band that's coming out to grab the souls real quick and get back the hell out of Dodge, back to where they're going. So you've got these little war bands that are probably fighting some kind of guerrilla war or getting what they need and then getting the heck out. The Stormcast and the Night Hunt, specifically were there sent to look for artifacts and treasures. And for the Night Hunt, what we found out later was we're there to scout. They were just there to scout some points. The Stormcast are looking for the Storm Vaults.
Because there's Storm Vaults that were left in the All Points.
In the All Points, they were left
and
there.
It's interesting because, as we'll talk about later, one of the terrain sets is a shattered Storm Vault.
And then the Gloomspite Gits, they kind of did with the Bone Splitters.
They're always around.
They're greenskins. They're always there.
They're mushrooms. They're going to be around. And then lastly, there's monsters in the initial release that could be brought into gameplay right away. The Raptorix and the Chaos Furies. So, Raptorix, tell me a little bit about Raptorix.
They're angry little chaos emus. They're literally emus possessed by demons. They've been mutated beyond what they originally were at one point.
And they're even more annoying than the one in that commercial.
Yeah.
Yes.
They are not there to save you money on
Yeah.
your car insurance. They are there to rip and tear. These guys are hunting in packs, and the scariest thing about them that the Chaos Warbands really have to look out for is that with as aggressive as they are, they have a scream that can go for miles and miles and miles, and they can fly, and once that scream goes out, they're
Reminds me of
coming.
somebody I used to date.
Yeah, right. It's kind of like, it's stupid, but the Cuckoos from The Legend of Zelda,
yeah,
you
yeah,
hit
yeah.
one, and then all of a sudden they're all coming at you.
Right,
That's
right.
basically what they are.
So and it's funny because there's little Easter eggs like that. You kind of wonder, okay, which video game were these guys
Yeah,
playing?
right,
Yeah,
yep.
right. And then Chaos Furies. And these are, I mean, we kind of have seen these before.
Yep.
So, but the new models are great.
Yeah, they're the minor undivided Chaos Demons. They don't kill for anything except for sport and pleasure. They
Right.
love it. They're just spiteful little
Right,
jerks.
right.
They're a lot like the Gremlins from Gremlins. That's how I think
The ones
about
that have
them.
been in the pool.
Yep, the once they've been in the pool
Yeah.
and they've been sprayed. They're small and easily beaten one-on-one.
Right.
But they're insanely cunning and they're mean to boot.
Yeah. And they also like to travel in groups.
Yep, they travel in swarms. They can be bribed and hired by the war bands, but they're demons.
Right.
So,
you
buyer beware.
Yeah, you got to be careful with that. So, so tell me about the Siege of the 8 Points.
All right, so this is actually something I'm wondering if it will have any impact on Warcry, and I'd love to see if it has an expansion of some point, is in the Wrath of the Everchosen book that was released, the expansion novel, or not
Right.
novel, the army book. Nagash and Catacross invaded the 8 Points.
Right.
And it was specifically to try to conquer it, but Nagash being Nagash, fall plans within plans, fall
Right.
back. Huge war. Catacross darn near won, but pushed back at the end. However, Death controls their gate, the end gate, into the 8 Points, and they control a webway of defenses around it.
Right.
So especially with like the Unmade being from Shyish,
Right.
that makes you wonder if they're going to release any expansion to reflect the change in the
Right.
landscape of the 8 Points, because here comes Death.
Well, it's interesting because Adam Troke, and I think it was the second or third preview, he made some one-line comment about Warcry leaving the 8 Points.
Really?
And so I don't know what that means. I don't know
Uh-huh.
if it means it's going into the realm of death. I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
But, or if he was just trolling us. Mm-hmm. But he did say it.
Yep.
So it's interesting. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how, because one of the things I think that they've been very good about with Age of Sigmar is the lore. It evolves.
It hasn't stopped since we started.
Right. It just keeps evolving, and so that's interesting to see how that's going to affect Warcry. A really nice feature they have in the core rulebook is a background table for each of the non-Warcry warbands.
Yep.
And it has like a random name generator. It's got a thing about the warband's origin that you can roll up, and it has a thing about the background on the leader
Yep.
of that warband. And it reminds me very much like an RPG where
Yeah.
you set up a backstory, and so you have some flavor and fluff for your warband as they go romping around in the 8 Points. I mean, I know that there are people who feel like if you're not playing one of the core warbands and or a Chaos warband, you shouldn't be playing Warcry. But I think that especially, as we'll talk later, the Tome of Champions, they really kind of fleshed out, as you were talking about, why those others are there.
Yep.
They basically got trapped.
Yep. They got
So,
trapped.
Yeah. And then the last thing is that GW actually does provide a program, a web app called Verenscribe, which is a list builder on their community website. I find it very helpful.
Yeah, it's very,
I
very
really
nice.
like it. It allows me to do my insane, 1,700 lists before I
Yeah.
put together a group. But it's a nice thing to have, and it's free. And
Yeah, I
you
mean,
can just
they're-
go.
It can't be beat. It's free and it's there, and it's sourced from them directly, so you don't have the bugs of
Right.
sometimes when you get
Right.
community sourcing.
So that's the basics of what's involved with the game. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about the general rules. And we're back. And what we're going to be talking about in this section is the general rules for Warcry. So the basic concepts that you would expect from a GW game are all there. They talk about rerolls, and you can't reroll a reroll. You're using D6s. Pre-measuring is okay. True line of sight is there. The one nice thing about Warcry as opposed to 40K, the terrain actually matters.
Yeah, a lot.
There's some special concepts specifically to this game One is the actual dice pool. So they have two types of dice that you use outside of the kind of battle part of the game. You have 6 initiative dice, and then you also have a wild die each turn. And these dice help determine who's going to go first, and they also are used to unlock different abilities. But that's a special thing to Warcry.
Yep.
You see kind of flavors of it here and there in some of their other games where some of the factions may have special dice that you hold off to the side to do things like
Destiny
the
dice.
Miracle Dice or Destiny Dice. But this is for all the warbands, and it's a key feature of Warcry. The other thing that's unique to this is rune marks. So both the faction itself and the fighter cards, depending on their role, will have different rune marks, different little icons. And these unlock abilities that are offered by the ability cards, and they're determined by which initiative dice you allocate to do those things. Now, one of the reasons they did this is so that the cards, they didn't have to publish cards in 17 different languages, right? They could do one set of fighter cards with just the rune marks on them and the stats. And if you buy, for example, all the different factions that we talked about earlier that are not core factions, the way that you played with them is you bought the cards in little card packs. They were little $6 card packs. They were awesome.
They're amazing.
They ran out of them too quickly, but you had to figure out how many you're going to make. But what you notice in that is that the abilities card, which actually explains what the rune marks do, I think there's like 8 or 9 of them in the pack in all these different languages. But the fighter cards, there's only one of each because it's just all rune marks and stats.
Yep, no words.
And so it makes sense to use the rune marks, and they were able to kind of save a lot of space. One thing that they might look at doing is maybe, you buy the cards and it has like a QR code or something in it, and you redeem that QR code in your language, and you just get your ability card in your language, so they don't have to end up printing all these different abilities cards in 17 different languages.
I could definitely see that. Yeah.
All right. The setup. So the battlefield, as we talked about, is 22 by 30. They have various different terrain sets. There's 5 different terrain sets, and they all come with a 22 by 30 board. You could use a kill team board.
Yep.
Also, shameless plug, tableward.com. They have some very nice 22 by 30 mats that you can use for game mats as well.
Never regretted a purchase from them.
No, never. In fact, you just got one today.
Yeah, I did. Thank you, sir.
Each fighter in the warband has a particular points value. A warband must include a leader and then 2 to 14 other fighters. So a minimum of 3 total, a maximum of 15 total. One of them must be a leader. They all have to be from the same faction. They all have the same faction rune mark. A typical points value for a game is 1,000 points. The wildlife here is very loud.
Yeah, it is.
And much like Age of Sigmar, and unlike 40K, the points values are pretty static. They're not manipulated by adding a lot of weapons and war gear and stuff like that.
I love that.
Yeah. I mean, you might have like a Seraphon dude with a club and a Seraphon dude with a spear. It's 2 different fighter cards and 2 different points values, but you don't have just a Saurus and you change all of his war gear.
Yep.
No, they are specific different fighters.
Yep.
Then you have your battle group. So that each war band, which is your 3 to 15 fighters, is split up into 3 battle groups. Those are the dagger, shield, and hammer. Okay, and then each of those must have at least one, and no more than half of the fighters. The shield, in particular, has to have at least a third of the fighters.
There is so much strategic thinking that goes into this before the game.
Yes,
it is hard because sometimes halfway through the game you'll go, oh dear Lord, I put all my eggs in this basket, and my shield is now stuck out here in the wind.
Yes, and what's interesting is that they kind of previewed this with meeting engagements.
Yep.
With the, they call it the spearhead, main body, and rear guard.
Yep.
And so it's a very, very similar feel. And just like in that, sometimes your dagger's not always the first one on the field.
Nope.
And so you really do have to think about, okay, what do I want in each one? Now, the cool thing about this is that in the basic rules, you don't have to figure out what's going to be in your hammer, shield, and dagger until you come to the table.
Yep.
Now, for tournaments, they want you to have it set for the most part, but you don't have to in the basic rules. So the dagger, shield, and hammer must have at least one fighter in it, and no more than half, but the shield has to have at least a third of the fighters. Okay. So you can see if you only have 3 fighters, you're going to be pretty limited.
Oh, yeah.
So the next thing is the battle plan. So much like open war cards, there are cards that are used to determine the battle plan. So the first thing they have is a terrain card. Now the terrain card is is different than a open war deck.
Yep.
In that it shows a very unique terrain setup. And they're designed to match a particular set of terrain, but you can pound it to fit and paint it to match.
Yep, and also don't panic if you built the starter box wrong. It says specifically in the rules, hey, this is a suggestion, get it as close as you can.
Right, exactly. And there's been 5 sets of terrain, and each of those sets of terrain has a unique set of terrain cards for them. There was the core box. There's the Corpse Rack Mausoleum, which was the haunted
Moore's
graveyard.
Garden.
And then they called it something. It's been repackaged 3 times.
Yeah,
This is
Garden
the
of
third time
Moore,
it
all
was
these
repackaged,
things,
yeah.
yep.
There's a Shattered Storm Vault. There's the Defiled Ruins, which kind of looks like the starter box, but not quite.
Yeah, I think it's the push fit terrain, if I remember right.
I think so. And then there's the Soul Drain Forest. Now, the Soul Drain Forest looked a lot like the Sylvaneth
If
Forest.
you play Sylvaneth, grab this box
Yes.
because you're getting 3 Wildwoods out of this
I
thing.
think it is.
I think it's 3, and it's only $80,
Yeah.
I believe. So grab
and it has a 22 by 30 mat, reversible mat in it, and it has the cards.
Yeah,
So it's totally worth it.
It's a steal. Grab this over. I would grab this over the normal Wildwood any day.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a terrain card, and you set up the field based on the card, and the card has a north on it. So you know how you're supposed to set up the terrain.
Yep.
Then there's a deployment card, which also has a north on it, and it shows where the dagger, shield, and hammer are supposed to be deployed, and each warband's dagger, shield, and hammer are in blue and in red, right? So one side is blue, the other side is red. The player with initiative determines who's going to be red or blue, right? So having initiative is important.
And it matters.
Yes.
A lot of these scenarios,
And
that
some of it
matters.
does, yes. And the battle groups may not always deploy all at the same time. So
No.
some of them, the hammer, dagger, and shield are all on the table to start the game, but a lot of them they aren't.
Yep.
A lot of them it'll say, shield comes on turn 2 or dagger comes on turn 3.
Yep.
And that's actually on the deployment card.
Yep. And with a lot of these scenarios, the game's only lasting 4 turns. So if your guys don't come in until turn 3, which often happens,
Yeah.
it's a rush.
Yeah, and that's interesting, too, that you bring that up, is that some of these games, they only go 4 turns.
Yep.
And so if you pull out a scenario that has 4 turns to it,
Yep.
and the deployment thing that you brought up has some people coming in turn 3 because they're not tied together, the
Nope.
scenario and the deployment are not tied together, yeah, that could be an issue.
Yep.
So that's why we were talking about before. It's very strategic.
Yep.
Yeah. Then the next thing is the victory card. Some people call it a scenario card. It has the victory conditions of the battle, how long the battle is going to be, as we were just talking about. Some of them, with objectives in Warcry, they are just like in Age of Sigmar, where you can claim them and move on. Right? In 40K, you
Yep.
got to sit on them to hold them. In Age of Sigmar and in Warcry, once you've claimed them, you can move on and it still belongs to you until somebody else grabs it.
Yep. And some of these are harsh. They
Yes.
are harsh. Some of them will be, and some of them favor certain warbands. Like there's some that are kill this guy. Well, if you don't have any range, sometimes that gets horrifying. Some of them, you may be playing a warband that doesn't favor combat, and it wants you to run in and kill.
Right. Yeah.
So-
But again, it's random.
Yep,
right?
it's
That's how
beautiful.
it works. And then there's a twist card, and that's just like Age of Sigmar 40K open war decks. It's a twist to the scenario, and so there's a lot of variability in these games.
It's over 1,000, wasn't it? They said that.
I think so, yeah. And it's kind of cool because the other thing is, like we were saying, is that if you have the different terrain sets, there are different setups.
Yep.
And as we've seen with Chapter Approved and the General's Handbook, and what we're going to see here with the Tome of Champions, they put out more and more stuff to add into here, as we'll talk about a little later. So those are the basic kind of features for the rules. And instead of taking a break, we're going to just jump right in here and talk about how to play the game. In each round of play, there's a hero phase, a reserve phase, and a combat phase. All right? In the hero phase, you start off by taking those 6 initiative dice that we talked about, and you roll the 6 initiative dice. You're looking for singles, doubles, triples, and quads.
Yep.
Now, the quantity of singles is going to determine who goes first, who has initiative. And then the doubles, triples, and quads unlock the abilities on those ability cards based on the rune marks.
And I don't know how they made this feel so satisfying.
Yeah.
But it really unlocked that. Whenever you roll that quad, you will
Yeah.
audibly hear, yeah, and people go,
the
I go
quads
nuts.
are super powerful.
Yep.
Right? Because if you're rolling 6 dice, getting a
Uh-huh.
quad, you're only going to get 1 quad in those 6 dice.
Yep, and every time somebody brings up probability, I urge you to play Warcry
Yeah.
because all those probabilities go right out the window.
Because probabilities are based on an infinite number of rolls.
Yeah.
Right? So you roll your 6 initiative dice, and then you have your wild die. Every turn, you have a single wild die, and that can be used as an additional single. It can be used to add to existing dice to make a double, triple, or a quad. You can not use it and use it on a subsequent turn. So there's a lot of variability that's built in with that wild die. To me, it helps really balance out
Yeah.
that 6 initiative die roll.
It's a really clever resource management
Yeah,
mechanic.
it really
is.
Because, if you have a game that only lasts 4 turns, you might decide to hold 2 rounds of wild dice.
Yep.
And on that 4th turn, just get all the stuff.
Yeah, like for the Iron Golems have the Juggernaut ability where you may just want to save up to kill that leader if the scenario calls for it. Just have him rush forward.
Right, because the Juggernaut is pretty powerful.
Yep.
Yeah, it basically is exactly what you would think the superhero Juggernaut is.
Yep.
That's what it is. So that's the hero phase. You have the initiative dice and the wild dice. So after you've done all that, the person with the most singles goes first.
Yep.
They don't decide who goes first.
They go
first.
Mm-hmm.
So, and whoever had initiative from the time before has to decide their wild die first.
Yep.
Right? Because some people, what they do, I've seen, is they'll hide the wild die about
Yep.
what they're going to do with it, and they reveal it at the same time. But the rules actually say whoever had initiative first is supposed to do it first.
Yeah, sometimes that can lead to or hey, if you're going to use the wild die to go first, I'm just going to counter with my wild die. Sometimes it leads to that, but often enough, you don't.
Right.
Often enough, you'll be able to just be like, hey, man, you want to go first.
Right.
So-
Or you're like, no, I absolutely have to have that quad.
Yep.
I need that
Yep.
Juggernaut, like, right now.
Yep.
So, yeah. All right, so that's the hero phase. The next phase is the reserve phase, and the reserve phase only is actually on turns 2 and later.
Yep.
In the reserve phase is when new guys come on the board, just like you would expect. And the deployment card talks about who comes on when. And so that's pretty much as you would expect.
Yep.
In Warcry, where it shows the deployment point in the deployment card, you can set up anywhere within 3 inches of that spot and any level vertically from there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, as we were talking about before, the levels sometimes matter. You can jump off of things and things like that. And so, so being able to deploy vertically is a thing. And so that's kind of cool. The next is the combat phase. And the combat phase is kind of what you'd expect in a lot of war games. There's 4 available actions: move, disengage, attack, and wait.
Yep.
Okay? And then during those actions is when abilities are used. And the abilities are indicated by the abilities card. And as we said before, they're unlocked by the rune marks and the doubles, triples, or quads. Right? So basically the abilities allow you to do things during your turn.
Yep.
And they basically give you like bonus actions
Yep.
a lot of times.
Sometimes they'll give you an ability so when that fighter activates, they can fly.
Right.
Something like that.
Something like that. Sometimes it'll let you attack twice or
Yep.
whatever. Yeah. All right. So move. Pretty basic.
Yep.
You have a move stat, and you move your move stat. Now there's jumping, falling, flying, and all those kinds of things, and you can it can be really super cinematic. You can use your move to go up ladders, go partway upstairs, to go across. You can actually jump across chasms as long as your movement characteristic will let you go across. You can do it.
And something I'll give that's something I give them a lot of credit for in this is they made moving across terrain feel right without
Yeah.
adding a difficult terrain
Right.
mechanic.
Yeah.
You just move, but it still feels like the terrain is there.
Right.
It's hard to explain, but it matters.
Right. Because you can fall.
Yeah, you can
And,
fall.
and just like Necromunda and Mordheim, if you fall 3 inches or more, you take falling damage.
Yeah, and especially there's a lot of powers out there that knock people down
Right.
or pull people to you.
Right. And you can pull people off of
Yep.
platforms and stuff. So anything that's not on the ground, they call it a platform.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and falling damage is pretty simple. On a 4 or 5, you take 1 point of damage. On a 6, you take 3 points of damage.
Yep.
So,
Considering most fighters have like 10 wounds, that's
Yeah.
significant.
And that's the thing is that, and we'll talk about that a little later, but yeah, most fighters are going to have anywhere between 8 and 40 wounds. I mean, they have a lot of wounds, and there's a reason why, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So that's moving. Disengage. Now, disengage is not a move action. It specifically says this is not a move action because there are abilities that key on moving. So you can't use those abilities when you disengage. So when you disengage, you can move up to 3 inches in any horizontal direction, not vertical, as long as you're more than an inch away from an enemy model. So that sounds very GW.
Yep.
Very, very typical. You can't climb or fly, but it is possible to box people in so they can't disengage.
Yep.
So that's, just like people who, put a bunch of grots around a tank in 40K, right? It's definitely a thing you can do. The next action is attack. Just like it sounds, which you would expect it to be. The weapons all have a range and an attack characteristic. You pick a weapon and you pick a target and you roll a dice.
Yep.
And it'll tell you how many dice you roll for that weapon. If your strength is greater than the target's toughness, it's a GW game, so what do you need?
3+.
3+, there you go. If the strength is equal to the toughness,
4+.
4+. And if the strength is less than toughness,
5+.
5+. Just like you would expect, 6s are always critical hits, and that's important.
Blech.
Very important. So you allocate damage. And in Warcry, there is no wounding throws, there's no saving throws. No.
Yeah.
You roll that 3+ or 4+ or 5+, you're doing damage.
Yeah, these guys aren't wearing much armor, and they're probably not that great of fighters comparatively, so they're not parrying much.
Yeah, it just goes straight through. It makes the game a lot faster.
Yes.
It really streamlines things a lot. The way that they vary that is the fighters have like a lot of wounds.
Yep.
Right? Anywhere between 8 and 40. Some have 50.
Stormcaster, 30 per guy, and that makes them feel
lot.
insane.
And the big monsters have a lot of wounds. And and on a regular hit, you might allocate 1 or 2 points of damage, but a critical might be 4 or 5 or 6.
Most of the leaders have a 6 damage weapon. It's crazy.
Yeah, for critical hits, and so that's really cool. And so that you're really looking for those 6s. I mean, I think I've heard more, cheers from Warcry tables than anywhere else.
Yep.
Because these guys are rolling critical hits. They're like,
Yeah, you see that golem go in, and his punch only does 2 damage normally, I believe. But when he swings on a 6, it's 6 damage, and it's insane.
Yeah, it's very cool. Because you can be to the point where you're thinking, oh, I'm never going to win this.
And then you
make
them.
a couple of critical hits and you kill the dude off, and you're like, oh, that's awesome. So what I really like about this mechanic, this mechanism, is that it allows GW to have a lot of flexibility with their fighters because they can do it by varying the wound characteristic.
Yep.
Right? And so if you have a big monster, you just give them a bunch of wounds. Right? You don't have to worry too much about, oh, this guy should be that many more points. This guy should. You can just vary it with. There's a lot as game designers talk about. You have more levers to pull.
Yep.
In terms of having that balance show up.
Yep, but also
and the nice thing is that when you're putting out an FAQ or an errata or a tome of champions, you can update those things in those books.
Super simply.
Yeah, super simple. All right, the last one, and it sounds. At first, it doesn't sound like it's much, but it is now, and it'll become important later. But that's the wait action. Now, you have 2 actions you can take. Now, waiting is very familiar for a role player, Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, that kind of stuff. You wait until, and you can, out of initiative, you can then attack.
Well,
here, it's very similar, all right? So you're basically on hold, and it burns one of your 2 actions. So if you do the wait action for your second action, you're done.
Yep.
Because you're not,
there's
you
nothing
wasted
left.
it. But if you wait for your first action, you can come back later to that fighter and activate them again. Because one of the things we haven't talked about is that we're activating alternating.
Yep.
I activate a dude, you activate a dude. I activate a dude, you activate a dude. And you go back and forth. And so if I take a guy and say, okay, I'm activating this fighter, he's going to wait.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have to activate somebody.
Yep.
And especially if there's a difference in model count between the 2 warbands, this can be super powerful.
Yep.
Super powerful.
I've seen people playing the Untamed Beast. There's a guy in there with a harpoon that throws it. I've seen people wait to set up the throw.
Yeah.
And then when an opponent gets close enough, because oftentimes you have to with these scenarios, throw it and pull him close so that somebody else can then run up and grab him.
Run up and smack him, yeah. Well, and the other thing is that this ends up being a super important action to take as it relates to abilities.
Yep.
So let's talk about abilities. So A fighter can use a single ability before or after one of their 2 actions. All right? The abilities are based on the rune marks that are and the available pool of doubles, triples, or quads, as we said before.
Yep.
Each faction has a unique ability card for that faction. It's thematic to that faction. I think they did a really good job with the abilities.
Oh, yeah, very flavorful.
Super good. And then there's also 5 universal abilities. And there's things like we said before. You can attack twice. You can move twice. You can do extra critical hits and that kind of thing. And as you would expect, the triple is better than the double. The quad is better than the triple. But you can use a triple to activate a double.
Yep.
Which is kind of neat. Now, normally, these abilities will provide bonus actions in addition to their 2 normal actions, but you would normally only be able to do 1. The difference is if you wait. If you use the wait action, you can use an ability.
Yep.
When you wait. When you come back to that fighter again and do a second action with them, you can do a second ability.
Yep.
Now, think about this. If you have your 6 wild dice and you decide to wait until a later turn, you have 6 initiative dice, and you wait and have those 2 or 3 wild dice, you might have 2 or 3 doubles or triples. You may have multiple abilities you want to trigger. And it's like you were talking about that harpoon guy.
Yep.
Right? You might have, you might want to use several abilities on that guy.
Yep.
It's a really cool way to make a wait action not feel like you're wasting something.
Yep. It gives you that tactical flexibility with these abilities.
Yeah.
They're amazing. Like the Corvus Cabal has one where if you jump from on high, you do more damage if you started higher than when you ended.
Yes.
And it's amazing how they made that.
And it's super thematic, right? Thematic to the warband. It's thematic to what would happen if somebody came dropping down on you with a big old blade. It's really cool. It's really cool. So I like the way that they integrated the abilities and the way that they added that weight variability, because it gives a lot more value to that weight. All right, let's talk about terrain, because it actually matters in this game. There's obstacles. Obstacles are anything that's at least an inch high. You have to it affects your movement if it's over an inch high. So just like you would expect, you bleed off an inch to go over it.
Yep.
But it also provides cover.
Yep.
So if you're within if you're within a half inch of something that's an inch high, and that thing is between the 2 fighters, you get cover.
Yeah.
Now, in the original rules, they left out the thing about the cover having to be between fighters, and so people were taking cover right next to a guy.
That was a little
dumb.
Yeah.
But people are like, oh, that's what the rules said. So they actually had to issue an FAQ.
I have
to say,
choice
don't be
words
stupid.
for that.
Yeah, I know. But it's cool. Cover counts. Platforms, as we said, anything that's at least 1 inch by 1 inch or larger, and that's above ground level, is considered to be a platform. And there's rules about falling off of platforms and climbing onto platforms and landing on platforms, etc. There's deadly terrain.
I love this so much.
You could have something that is like the barbed wire, like we're talking about. You could have a little briar pit or stone pit or something.
Spiked barricades.
And it's deadly, right? So anytime you go past it, you just take a falling test. And it's super simple, right?
Yep. When was the last time you took dangerous terrain in a game?
Right.
I love this so much. The board is as much a part of the game as the models are. It's amazing.
And the thing that's nice about it is they didn't make a bunch of complicated rules.
No.
You just use a falling test.
Yep.
On a 4+ you take damage. Right? There's stairs and ladders, and you can end partway up or partway down the stairs and ladders. You just mark where they're at.
Yep.
Right? And there's some really cool terrain sets out there where you can actually slide the base into the ladder.
The bell tower.
Archways and doors. Archways and doors matter because there are certain types of creatures or gargantuans and mounts, for example, can't go through archways and doors, and beasts can't go through doors.
Yep.
And so those things matter on the board as well. And so, again, it's really cool because it adds tactics to where you put your dudes, and it's more than just, it's a wall so you can go through it.
And your warbands, too, because some of these terrain setups block off areas of the board with things that have doors on them. So if your monster that you bought as a mercenary is in your hammer, you better figure that one out real quick.
Because you're looking at the deployment, and you're like, well, and that's what I was talking about. You can decide what your dagger, shield, and hammer is at the table, because you might have originally decided to have that monster in your hammer, but when you get to the board, you look at the terrain and go, oh, no, he needs to be in the shield. If I put him in the hammer, he's not going to be able to go anywhere.
Yep.
You're absolutely right, And then the last thing is chaotic beasts and thralls. So if you're playing quote-unquote matched play, a lot of times you won't have the chaotic beasts come in, but otherwise these different beasts we talked about can be involved in the game.
Yep.
And they come in on twist cards, and they come in with campaign rewards as you go through the campaign. We'll talk about that later, but especially the 6 core warbands, they can take things called thralls, which are basically extra dudes.
Yep.
Think Jews in Necromunda. That's basically that idea. All right, so that's kind of the basic kind of way you play, and the way that you set up the boards and things like that. When we come back, we're going to talk about the difference between open, narrative, and match play. And we're back, and we're talking about the ways to play Warcry. The first is open play. Now, in 40K and Age of Sigmar, open play is basically anything goes. Just bring your stuff and play. In Warcry, especially in the core book, it mainly references multiplayer games.
Yep.
It talks mainly about how to do multiplayer formats. There's battle plans included for it, and it's they don't really just say go do whatever.
Yep.
It's a little bit different. In the narrative play, this is where the campaign thing is.
I love this campaign.
And this thing is brilliant.
Yep.
So each faction has a unique campaign track, and the campaign is basically portable, so that every game that you play doesn't have to be in a set group or against a set opponent or whatever. Anytime you play Warcry, you could just be doing the campaign for your warband.
Yep. I'm not trying to take your base. I'm on my own path to glory.
Right. Exactly. And that's what's so cool.
Yep.
And then the warband progresses as it goes through that track. The only thing is there's certain key milestones that they call them convergence points.
Yep.
And when you're playing a convergence game, each track has 3 convergence points, and there's unique scenarios for those convergent points, and it's unique for each warband.
Yep.
And so if you're going to play a convergence game, you just say to your opponent, hey, I have a convergence game for my campaign. Are we cool with that? And your opponent might say, no, I don't want to play that. So fine, you play just a regular Warcry game.
Yep.
Or if they say, yeah, then you can play your convergence thing, and that helps you advance along your track. And so the basic kind of narrative way to play Warcry is with that campaign. And what's really cool about that is they all use the same rule set. So, what in 40K you think of as the match play rules.
Yeah.
But it's the same rules for all of it. It's just how you play the game is different.
Warcry, you might as well play a campaign.
Yeah.
You might as well. Even if you're going pickup nights,
Right.
pickup games with your friends, you
There's no
might as
reason
well
not
just
to.
play it. Yeah, there's no reason not to.
There's no reason not to. The only reason to not do it is if you wanted to play a different warband every time
Yep.
or something like that. But if you have a set warband of dudes, guys and gals going out into the 8 points to wreak havoc, might as well play the campaign.
Yep.
It's fun. It has some really cool advantages. It has a printable sheet that you can use. You can print it right from their website and follow it.
Yep.
The last way is match play. Now, match play is basically tournaments. They have a format in there for how to play a tournament. They have the terrain cards and the scenario cards have these little logos on them for ones that are quote-unquote balanced. And you basically pull those cards out, and those are the ones you use for kind of match play. It provides a more balanced matchup. The terrain is set up pretty even, and the scenarios are pretty even. The only random elements would be the terrain and the twist.
Yeah.
But even the terrain stuff, they have balanced terrain setups.
And not to dig on it, it's a great way to play if that's your thing, but I almost feel like this takes some of the character out of the game.
Yeah, it does.
This isn't what I wanted to play this game for.
Yeah.
And again, not digging it. If this is your shtick, by all means, play it. But we're in the 8 points. We're as close to the realm of chaos as you can get. Like, random's the name of the game.
Well, what's nice about it, I mean, they do have... I like the fact for people who want things to be a little bit more balanced out.
Yep.
You can use that. But the other thing about it is you can agree to do the same format for your campaign.
Yep.
You can say, hey, I'm playing my campaign, but I really want to use the balanced scenarios and stuff. Are you cool with that? I mean, it's just a matter of what cards you're using. It's so flexible. It's really cool.
Yep.
The other thing that's really cool about it is they give you kind of a format for a tournament on how each round you can gain different bonuses for that event.
Yep.
Right? And so that makes it a little bit nicer in terms of how you do a tournament.
Yep.
And then there's suggested points that are awarded for different wins and things like that and other benefits. And it just gives you a nice little structure for running a tournament. But because you can't really come and say, hey, we're going to do an all-day thing. It's just going to be a campaign day.
Yeah.
And just do the campaign, because the campaign, I think, is 9 scenarios, 12 scenarios, 9, something like that.
Yeah, it's a good amount.
Yeah. So this is a way to kind of do a thing in a day.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? It's pretty nice. And then at the end of 2019, we got the Tome of Champions. So think Chapter Approver General's Handbook. This is the Warcry version, and it's called the Tome of Champions. It's the annual book. It's 129 pages of awesome sauce.
Yep.
It is chock full of all kinds of really, just awesome stuff. I got to get different adjectives, because it's just when I went through this book, it just blew my mind how much they packed in it.
I unfortunately haven't bought it yet, not for lack of trying. I just haven't been able to find it. With everything that happened.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic book. When the time I had to flip through the store copy, just everything it brings to the table, I would almost say that it's a little bit better than Chapter Approved, just about even with the General's Handbook.
I actually like it better than both.
Really?
Yeah. So it adds something for all 3 ways to play. It adds 13 new faction warbands and 2 more Stormcast Eternal warbands.
Yes.
So it also adds backgrounds tables for all of those, just like in the core rulebook.
Which is really good.
So it's amazing, right? The other thing that's really nice is that it includes the stat cards for the non-Warcry warbands that were in the card packs before when the game first got released.
If you think about money, $8 a card pack, that alone makes the book worth the money.
Yeah. So that's a really nice nod to the fact that those cards ran out really fast.
Yeah, they went like wildfire.
And it's the nice thing about it is if you're looking at the card packs that came out for this year, and you kind of go, I don't know if I want to buy the card packs. Just wait, buy the annual next year. It looks like they're going to be in there.
Yep.
Right. So that's kind of cool. So what are the new warbands? Slaves to Darkness, Osiark Bone Reapers, Ogor Moth Tribes. I knew I was going to do that. Caradron Overlords, Disciples of Tzeentch, Skaven, Beasts of Chaos, Fire Slayers, Sylvaneth, Blades of Corn, basically everybody else.
Yep.
Maggotkin of Nurgle, Heed Knights of Slanesh, Seraphon, and then 2 additional what we call chambers for the
Brings
Stormcast.
the whole book in.
The Warrior Chamber and the Sacrosanct Chamber because the first one was the Vanguard Chamber.
Yep. And
for the Stormcast Eternals. And basically, it allows everybody to play.
Yeah, and that's the thing is I have to say it. I know people didn't like non-chaos warbands being in this. I know people didn't. But the genius they have in this is fantastic. You often hear Kill Team is really touted as, hey, buy a box and you can play this. Right. That's true. With Warcry, it's more so.
Oh, yeah.
You like the Caradron Overlords, but you're not sure how you feel about the flavor of what warband you want to do.
Right.
Buy a box or 2, and you do have a warband.
Right.
And you can go in. If you wanted to play Warcry, but none of these things grabbed you, you already have a Stormcast army. You've got however many warbands you want.
Yeah, exactly.
And you just jump in and play. There's a Warcry tournament, and not enough people show up for some reason.
Right.
The store owner or anybody that has their Stormcast army on them, or their Caradron or Blades of Corn army,
whatever.
Fred, let me put this together real quick, and we've got a Warcry army.
I mean, that's how I first jumped in with my Daughters of Cain.
Yep.
Just jump right in, and it worked out great.
Yep.
Well, it didn't work out great. I didn't think they were a great warband, but I was able to play right away, which is the point, and so that was really awesome. So, yeah, I mean, this basically unlocks the game for virtually anybody already playing Age of Sigmar.
Yep, everybody. Mm-hmm.
And if you're doing that Starship Troopers, do you want to know more?
Yep.
Buy a box and play.
Oh, well, especially when they brought the warbands to Slaves of Darkness, right?
Right.
Like vice versa. Like they've definitely made this game is probably their most accessible game.
So I think what you're referring to now is that the 6 original warbands are now in the Slaves of Darkness book.
Yep.
As a selection.
Yep.
A troop. Are they battle line?
They're battle line.
Yeah,
yep.
battle line selection even. So that's amazing.
Yep.
It was such a great way to leverage all of this. So they added all that. For open play, it adds a whole bunch of different ways to set up terrain. A terrain generator, like what they had with meeting engagements that we talked about in one of the Justin and I talked about in one of the earlier episodes. It adds different ways to manipulate terrain and have terrain matter in the game.
Yep.
It adds monstrous melees, which are basically just big arena battles for monsters.
Yeah.
All right, and the models that they brought out in support of this were the Formoroid Crusher, the Mind Stealer Spheranx, which is a really odd-looking model, I think. It's cool, but it's freaky.
Yeah, it's weird.
Freaky. The one that seems to be the most popular is the Ogrid Myrmidon.
He's so good.
People love that model. And I saw somebody converting one to a Demon Prince in 40K.
Yeah.
Put wings on him and stuff.
Yep.
That's going to be amazing. And the Chimera. The Chimera was in Failcast, and now they've come out in plastic, I believe.
Was the Chimera in Failcast?
I think it was, because I think I had a Failcast one.
Jeez. It's an old model. It's an older
it's
model.
an old model, but they brought it out in plastic. It's pretty
I was
cool.
thinking the Manicore. You're right.
Right.
Yep.
For narrative play, they added campaign trails for every one of the new warbands. So all those warbands I just listed off, they all have a campaign track. It added these things called fated quests, which are basically generic campaign trails, right? But if you're using a Warcry specific warband, one of those original ones, you actually get extra bonuses in the form of additional fighters or thralls as you go along. It adds a thing called challenge battles, which you can kind of do either in between campaigns or at the end of a campaign. They kind of give you specific artifacts of power.
Yep.
They have another thing called the Trial of Champions, which basically is a campaign on hard mode.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal.
It's a lot harder to do. It's crunchier. There's a lot more like long-term wounds. It has very much a Mordheim feel to it.
Get attached to no one.
Yeah. So it's if you liked Mordheim, it's a great way to buy this book, and you can you really get that feel. It also adds roaming beasts, which is kind of cool. They have wild cave creatures, which are like Troggoths and Squigs, and they have restless undead.
So good. So good.
And so as you're playing, you could have these like random skeletons or bone rasps or whatever wraiths coming through. You have to that attack you and stuff. So it's another way to basically have that chaotic beast feel.
Yep.
And again, unlocks the ability for people to A, either use their own models that they already own, or B, entices people to buy the other models.
Well, heck, there you go. You want to do something after the Siege of the 8 Points? Just have a game with some Restless Undead walking around.
There you go. Right? I mean, the cool thing is you could even add that Restless Undead mechanism to an Age of Sigmar game.
Yeah, yeah.
You really could do that.
A lot of the game you can. It's
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
really...
Yeah. They put updates to the campaign points table to make it smoother. They had some glitches that when you have thousands of people playing, you find out things that didn't work the way you thought it did. And so they modified that. Which is another great thing for annuals, right? They're able to update things and kind of fold in all the errata into the new book. And then for match play, they ended up with 6 new battle plans and then 12 hidden agendas. And this is yet another kind of random feature that goes into the game. So you've got your victory condition, you've got your twist, and now you might actually have a hidden agenda that the other player doesn't know. I love those.
I'm a huge fan of this too. It's like a feature in Batman where you
that
have
right?
a plot that you're trying to follow to
it's
unlock
also
these
in
abilities.
Malifaux.
Yep, it's in Malifaux too. Yeah, it's a really great mechanic.
I really like it. And in the 40K and Age of Sigmar open war decks, it's called a sudden death card.
Yep.
Right? So if you're really outmatched, you have these secret
It's the Hail Mary.
sudden death. Yeah, it's a Hail Mary thing. And then it also has an escalation tournament structure in the match play thing for having warbands progress as the events go on. And what's cool about this is that this is something you could use as kind of a weekly thing, right? Instead of playing it all in one day, you could actually do this as a 3 or 4 or 5 week thing and have the warbands kind of all on the same track instead of having individual campaign tracks. Because, you have run events as well as I have, and trying to get people to be involved in a 12-week campaign is hard.
Yeah, it has that spike at first, dwindles, spikes again, and then crashes.
Crashes,
That's how it
and
often
so
happens.
if you want to do a 3 or 4 week thing, you could use this escalation format.
Yep.
It would work great.
Mm-hmm.
It would work great. So I really like that. Yeah, so I really think that they really hit a home run with the Tome of Champions.
Yes.
Anything you wanted to add about the Tome of Champions?
I just think with Warcry, it's easy. It's easy to really pick up this book because I think I have to agree with you. The more I think about it, that this hits the home run better than the other two books or the other two games, because you are getting your money's worth just from the warbands.
Yeah.
And
right.
everything else in there is extra icing on the cake.
Right.
And
exactly.
it's fantastic.
Yeah. I agree. It's a really, really great publication. So if you're going to play Warcry, don't just pick up that core book. Make sure you grab that Tome of Champions.
So before we get to the scrying pool, we're going to have a couple of interviews. We'll be talking to Joel and to Dan, who are streaming content on twitch.tv/Lords and Heroes. So Joel, how are you today?
I'm doing well. We have a lovely day today in Michigan.
In Michigan. So you're on Eastern Standard Time, I take it.
Yes, I am.
Excellent. So Joel, you're known in the Facebook community, the Lords and Heroes Facebook community, as Joel David.
Correct.
But I guess I learned as we were doing this, David, I guess is your middle name?
Yes, that's my middle name.
Okay, cool. And then when you are streaming on the Lords and Heroes Twitch feed, which is what we're going to be talking about, what is the name people will see there?
Golgotha. That has been my gamer tag name for decades.
Okay, excellent. So why don't we start out so people can kind of get an idea of who you are and your background and kind of stuff. What's the short version of how you got to where you are today in the hobby?
Sure. I started in 2016. I got out of Magic the Gathering. Well, I should say I sold my physical copies of Magic the Gathering.
So how long were you playing Magic before that?
Oh, man. I have been playing Magic since college, so close to 20 years.
Wow. And you got rid of all your physical stuff?
I got rid of all my physical stuff. It was almost $8,000 of a collection.
Wow. That can be kind of traumatic, no?
I had a good group of guys playing, and 4 of them just dropped out and sold their collections because their family life was getting busy and hectic.
Right.
One of my closest friends had a preemie baby and really hard, difficult issues, and so he sold his collection, and he's been my main guy to play with for years.
Okay.
And so I felt like I needed to do something else, and I was just holding on to pretty much cash.
All right, and then what?
So I started trading in my collection, and I had a bunch of altars, and the altars you can't just sell directly to a reseller. And I had a local guy who wanted them, and he's like, well, I'll trade you. And I got this box here. It's called Age of Sigmar. He's like, I don't play it. I play 40K. And I looked at it, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. It's got paladins on it. I mean, RPG-wise, I've played World of Warcraft since beta. So I'm like, well, dang, it looks like a paladin. I'm not. It's cool. I like these models. So I'm like, sure, I'll take it.
And these were Stormcast Eternals.
Yeah, it was the Stormcast versus Khorne collection. Start collecting block, or not start collecting. Original set.
The original starter.
It had the hardcover book in it, which I still have.
Right.
And then he actually had the painting guide for painting that set, because they made a book, a really nice book on how to paint the set.
Right.
So I got that. I brought it home, read through the painting guide book and assembly guide, and started building them. Really enjoyed it. Enjoyed the models. Enjoyed the Stormcast models.
All right.
And so I bought 3 more boxes with some credit I had from Miniature Market, and without even playing the demo, I actually have not even looked up a YouTube video on how to play. But I just looked. The models were cool. I mean, it was the barbarians, the Khornes, and it was.
So you were just on that. So 4 years ago, you just started out on the hobby side of it, not playing at all.
Yeah. When I was in middle school and high school, I built a ton of scale models. For, I don't know if you guys have 4-H out in the West Coast, but Midwest 4-H is a foundation thing in middle school, high school.
We have farms in California.
I don't know if they had that. I didn't know if they had something else or.
I know.
But they had what they had is they have a model building diorama
Oh,
competition competition thing you get into, and so I used to build those for both entry for county and state competition once a year. So
well,
I
that's excellent.
had a scale model background,
Okay.
enjoyed diorama building.
Oh,
So
that's really helpful for doing terrain and stuff.
yes, yes. The terrain is one of my passions. I love terrain.
Awesome. So
Um,
then, so you started playing AOS, I assume, at some point.
yes, I went on Facebook and searched local groups.
Uh
How
huh.
did how did I get the idea? I might have been listening to Uncle Adam stream. I
Okay.
think I found him on Hobby, searching some hobby, and
Right.
he had suggested in one of his video casts looking on Facebook for groups.
Right.
So I
Right.
did. I found it. I found a guy who was looking to play. Um, I went to play at a local game store. He was playing Zinch and AOS 1.0, the first thing. So my first
So it
game
was kind of a
ended.
dirty list back then, as I
Yeah,
recall.
my first game ended top of turn two. And it gave me a flavor I was not exactly
Yeah, you
thinking
kind of
the
thumped the
game
baby
was.
harp seal. He's not supposed to do that.
Yeah, and I had told him it was my first game, but
Wow.
I was like, wow, that's an impressive thing. Is this like every game? And he said it was. So I looked around, and then I started talking to some other people, and they're like, "Oh no, that's a
No.
crazy
Yeah, that's
list,
not
and that's
right.
not what the
Exactly.
game's like."
Right.
So I started looking around, and I created a group myself for a local area on Facebook for the Grand Rapids and area of Michigan,
Okay.
and I got some people to join, and we started just doing casual gaming, narrative gaming. I got
Okay.
the first. There's 5 or 6 books, 6 books of the narrative campaign they
Uh
published,
huh. Right.
which I really wish they would keep doing that because those were amazing books for just like chucked full of battle plans and storyline and
Right.
everything.
Right.
So I just had those books and we played through them with the local guys, a few ladies that played. So enjoyed that. Um, our
And do you
local
have a gaming
games.
group now that at a store, or how does that work?
Yes, I floated around a few stores. One of their stores closed down, kind of like yours did, over in California. And
Right.
I floated around. My in-laws have a nice building for their business that I used for a while. And then about 2 years ago, I found a group that was doing a narrative campaign, looking for people to play. About 30 minutes for me. I live out in the country, north of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and
Okay.
so 30-minute drives not a rare for me to do anyway to get to do something. So I drove over there, found a great group of people, and just started playing. That's been my store ever since. Play.
What's the name of the store?
Name of the store is Excelsior Games and Comics over in Greenville, Michigan.
Greenville, Michigan. All right. So
Yeah,
folks can in that area can drop by and hang out with you there. So
it's
you've
an
been
awesome
playing
store.
playing Lords and Heroes, Age of Sigmar at Excelsior Games and Comics, and my understanding is you also organize some events there with someone.
Yes, I have a bit after I started the narrative campaign. The guy who's been organizing is a truck driver, and he got started doing state by state driving. So there was no one organizing AOS side. So I said, "All right, well, I can do it. I have no problem organizing. I'm a financial manager by profession, so I manage
Okay.
people at work, and I'm like, this is easy. This is fun. So I can do
Yeah.
this."
Yeah.
So I started organizing the AOS stuff, and then the guy Shadrach, who's in our group in the Lords and Heroes Facebook,
All right.
um, he was organizing 40K events, and he and I kind of crossed waves. And he's like, "Well, let me show you 40K," and I'm like,
Uh huh.
"Well, let me show you Age of Sigmar."
All
And
right. Got peanut butter in his chocolate then.
yeah, we mixed together, and so he's playing Age of Sigmar, I'm playing 40K, and we both
Nice.
support each other and co-lead events now. So
That's
if it's a
fantastic.
tournament or an event, both of us are there. usually both of us aren't even playing. We're the ones organizing it and roughing it and everything for
But
the events.
I find a real fun factor in that too, watching people have a good time and seeing an event fire off well and stuff.
Oh yeah, no, that I get so much enjoyment from hosting events and running events and watching people enjoy the time they get to play.
Uh huh.
And one of the things I do, one of my other hobbies is 3D printing. So
Yeah, I've noticed that in the Lords and Heroes, you've posted some of the 3D printing stuff.
the only reasons my printers are not running right now is because of recording, but otherwise those puppies run 24/7, popping out
Nice.
terrain.
Yeah. And
Both,
with your diorama background, that must all just come together really well.
yeah, yeah. I envision something in my head of what I want it to be on the board, and then
Uh huh.
I just print it as I go and change as I need, but uh, try to make what's in my head show up on the table. I usually try to
That's amazing.
take um, ideas from the lore, be it 40K's books or stories or AOS books or stories that I read. I'm an avid Audible listener for Black Library stuff, so
Uh
I hear it and then I'm like, oh, I think I can replicate that idea.
huh.
So
That's cool.
it's awesome. I enjoy it. I really love that aspect of making something that comes from an idea from a writer or an author and then put it onto the table and then let the players play with it. And I think
So you've been
everyone
in the hobby for
appreciates it.
4 years and
Hmm.
playing pretty seriously for 2 years. How many armies do you have right now?
I have one,
So I know you got Rotbringers,
yeah. So my main army is Nurgle. I love Nurgle.
right? Remember that? Yeah, I
My
saw that.
Rotbringers is my. It's those model ranges are just amazing. Wish the
Right.
rules were better, but the models are amazing. I have every model that GW has made for that has a Rotbringer keyword on it.
So you have
Um,
Rotbringers, and I know you have Nurgle demons.
yes, I have about 5 to 6,000 points of Nurgle. I have
Okay.
4,000 points of Sylvaneth, which I have let
Oh,
my
Sylvaneth.
daughter take
That
over.
came out of left field there. Okay. Oh, your daughter. Okay.
My oldest daughter,
Uh huh.
she plays the Sylvaneth. That's her
Okay.
girls, she calls them. So I got this into the Sylvaneth. I'm big narrative, so I was trying to replicate some of the stories.
Oh yeah.
And in the first stories and campaign books, Nurgle and Sylvaneth were a major part, and I was trying to replicate the story. So that's how I grabbed the Sylvaneth.
Right. And then they're also, I mean, in the Realm Gate Wars books, they feature very prominently too.
Yeah, they have specific battalions
Right.
and stories
Right.
all around them. So I
Right.
built around that. That's how I got into the Sylvaneth.
And then you must have
I
Stormcast and Corn because of that initial starter.
Yes, I had over 4 or 5,000 points of Stormcast Corn. I have sold a significant amount of those. I'm down to like 500 points of each, which I use for starter training in
Okay.
the store. I always
Yeah.
have demos ready to go for anyone who's wanting to look into this game.
That's fantastic.
So I have those for demos. They're easy. There's no magic in the lists. It's just
Right.
smack and shields
Right.
and swords kind of thing.
Right.
Um, I sold those to support what I now have is I'm getting Sylvaneth for my oldest son. I'm sorry, not Sylvaneth, Seraphon for my oldest son.
Seraphon.
Um,
Okay.
so we've just started that, and
Okay.
I'm
I'll watch you
teaching
pass
him
me
how to
by as
paint
I.
and go on there. Something his father doesn't do.
Yeah. I'll see you pass me by with those as because with my Seraphon. And
So
then so you have 4 kids. What about the youngest ones? What are they playing yet?
they are. I'm just now getting them into the hobby. So
Okay.
my youngest daughter is 6, and we are going with a squig army for her.
Oh, so fun.
So I have about 3,000 points of squigs because I was building my Sylvaneth army in that
Uh huh.
Gloom Curse, Gloom,
Right.
Loon Curse box came out.
Loon Curse. Right. Yeah.
I bought 4 of those suckers. So
Wow.
I got I got a Sylvaneth army and I got a full squig army pretty much, and then besides buying a few other odds and ends.
Right.
Then I sold out or I traded out my X-Wing collection. X-Wing is a fantasy
Uh-huh.
flight game.
Yep.
And I had an X-Wing collection. I traded that for a full Spider-Fang Grotz army.
Oh,
That's
wow.
probably on fifth. I might be the fifth or sixth owner. It was all fantasy bases. Nothing had
Oh,
been converted. And
okay.
that happened at the very end of last year. And I'm working on that as part of my. I mean, it all goes with Gloomspite Gets. So I've got that. My
Right.
youngest son, who's only 3, he really likes trolls, and I had some
Okay.
troll models. So I'm like, oh, I've got Gloomspite Gets. I might as well give you some trolls, and
Right.
give my youngest daughter's got Squigs, and then I got the Spider Fang, and we could throw them all together, and we got 6,000 points of some massive grot army.
So the Spider Fang rescue thing that's your New Year, New Army then.
Yes, it is.
Awesome.
I'm working on that. That's what I'm going to have streaming. What I'm going to be working on today. I was scrubbing them. They've all the spiders, about 40 of them, are in a bucket right now, soaking on their probably
So
third bath of cleaner.
so you don't see the spiders too much. Is that what got you interested in it? Because you don't see them very often?
Yeah, we were having a flea market day
Uh-huh.
at our store. Something I thought would be a good idea. I've seen it. Actually, I think you've done it quite a bit.
Yep.
And I thought, that's a great idea around here. So I brought a bunch of my stuff. Everyone brought stuff. And I had a bunch of Star Wars RPG and X-Wing and some Imperial Assault. And I was like, all right, I'm not playing this. I'm just going to. And Star Wars has kind of gave me a bad taste lately. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to
We're not going to
divest.
go there. We're just going to go right
Yeah.
past that. So
I'm
keep
going to
going.
divest from Star Wars for now. And so the guy came up to me and he's like, I have this really old army. It's probably, he's like, I'm not the original owner, but I got it I got it. It's in a box. And he's like, it's all in one box. And so I'm like, oh, no one's interested in the Star Wars stuff. All right, let's do it. So I followed him back home, and I gave him all my Star Wars stuff, and he gave me a box of spiders. It came with 3 big arachnids.
Yeah. Right. I love those.
And it came with one of the bosses, spider boss, and then it came with 60 of the spider riders, and like 40 random grots too, with spear. And from what I can tell from all the models, this is probably 3 or 4 generations of GW grots.
Right.
Because when I've been cleaning them, they're different. They're all different, like how they were built or assembled. Some of them are one model with just one mold with no assembly required.
Right. The original single monopose models. Right.
And the shields have different designs, but they all work together once they're all painted the same.
Well, that's cool. I mean, when back in fantasy, I had an all night goblin army, and at that time, I was like, man, I really want to do an all spider army. They came out with those big spiders, and I was like, oh, I really want to do this army. And I'm glad I didn't, because I didn't need another army. But yeah, I always found that very interesting. But now you have to do it. How do you play a Spider Fang army? Because they don't have their own book.
They have their own clan, though. Within the book, they have their own clan. So they've got their own magic. They have their own. They have their own artifacts, and they have their own rules. If they're bringing a Spider Fang general, and then that becomes their own. And then the Spider Fang Raiders become battle line, and they all become a cohesive unit.
Nice.
So they don't work well with any of the other grots. That's the one thing I did find.
Okay.
So in a way, my Gloomspite Gets is technically 3 armies. It's a troll army, a squig army, and a Spider Fang Grotz army, because they all have different rules and they all work differently.
That's interesting, but all in the same book.
All in the same book, yeah.
That's interesting. So
I was glad. I was worried when I got them that they would have been dropped.
Yes, exactly.
They're web-only order, and they're rarely in stock.
Yeah. No, I know. That's why I was wondering. Okay, well, it's good to know. So you used to play Magic. You used to play.
Oh, I still play
Star
Magic.
Wars.
I just play digital Magic.
Okay. So, okay. Arena.
Yep.
Right.
Arena is my jam now for
And on
Magic.
tabletop, you've got AOS and 40K.
Yep.
And what else?
For at home, we play. We're big into Blackstone Fortress. I have
Oh, okay.
every expansion on that. My kids and I play that. That's our RPG kind of fix.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I have tried real RPGs with them, and they weren't. They're not ready for them yet. My kids range from 10 to 3,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Blackstone Fortress is RPG enough to build your character, kind of go around
Right.
and have upgrades and stuff, and enjoy the RPG idea, and then also just to have constraints to the board and stuff like that. So
Cool.
we play that. Another one that Barnes and Noble exclusive is that Space Marines Adventures game,
Yes.
which
Yeah.
is I'm from what I can tell, it's very much a kind of simplified Space Hulk
Okay.
in a way.
Well, it's funny
Um,
because I own it and I have not pulled it out of the box at all. So it's good to know.
it's amazing for an 8 to 5-year-old range. It's a
Yeah.
amazing game,
Oh,
and so
okay.
they
Well,
really
that fits
enjoy
me
that.
perfectly then.
um,
So, and I heard you say Warcry before, so you're playing that.
yeah. I mean, Warcry just comes with the thing.
Yeah.
Trying to get more people to play Warcry because I really enjoy it. My kids didn't play it, and we've got a few people in the store. I have more than a few people who build their war bands, but I just can't get them to show up on a time to all play
Right.
more than a couple. But I really enjoy Warcry, and then I don't play much Underworlds. I should probably sell
Uh-huh.
my card collection of Underworlds since I have all of them. But
Right.
I collect the Underworlds models because I love the
Right.
sculpts.
Yeah, the models are great. They're doing such a great job with that game. They
Yeah,
really are.
I really like the thematic bases.
Yeah.
That's just amazing how they look. And I know I've heard some people like go, "Oh well, Warcry is going to replace Underworlds, and they'll just do this super sculpts with their Warcry ones." But the ones I've seen, they don't come with the special bases, and I'm like,
Right.
some of these
No,
things
the
are
Warcry is pretty
amazing.
much like the AOS multi-part models. The Underworlds, in my observation, is targeted directly towards the board game / Magic folk.
Yeah,
It's got a deck building mechanic. It's played on hexes. The models are push fit. That's the audience they're trying to snag with that.
yeah, and it definitely has that aspect to it. Thinking about card advantage, thinking
Yep.
about your deck building, when
Right.
you need to do something, when you don't need to do something in a sequence. That definitely
Right.
has the card game built into it.
Right. Exactly. Yes. I mean, when you have people at a tournament asking how to resolve the stack, you know where they came from.
Yep.
So, what are your plans for your Twitch sessions?
I am going to be working on the Spider Fang restoration project.
Okay.
That's my main goal. I was my new army new year. I mean, I really bought the Spider Fang last year. This
Right.
this year, I actually bought a KO army,
Okay.
brand new.
Okay.
I was looking to support our local game store. He was going. I mean, he's shut down right now.
Right.
He had a bunch of inventory, and I said, "All right, I will buy you out of all of your Aether War and other KO
Wow.
stuff." And then I got some of his Fire Slayer stuff too because I'm going to do a Duarden kind of list because the book allows
Okay.
that. So, but I really enjoy building bases and stuff, and I used Green Stuff World's bases, and they just came out with a steampunk base
Oh,
thing
great.
to roll out, and I was going to do that, and they're delayed on that, so I put that off with the pandemic going around. So instead, I'm just going to do the restoration of the Spider-Fang Grots.
Do the Spider Fangs for now, and then if other stuff restarts, you can mix in a bunch of flying stunties.
Yeah.
All right.
So, and
That's
I really
fantastic.
enjoy
Now,
assembly anyway. So the KO gives me the assembly because the
right.
Spider-Fang are more, if anything, repair work. But
Right.
I also wanted to show people that you can get used armies and save money and still make them look like your own. If
Well,
you
I
do
think that one of the things that's going to be
stuff.
very interesting for your Twitch sessions, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this, but you're colorblind.
Yes, I am. I am
And so
colorblind.
it'll be very interesting to hear your take on how you do those kinds of things in your sessions. And so I think people might find that super interesting.
I do a lot color by number in a way, which is why I enjoy GW's instructions as well as others. Like so there's like Angel Giralde Z. He
Yeah.
does a lot of stuff
Geraldes.
where
Yep.
he tells you exactly what he's using in specific areas, which really
Right.
helps people that are colorblind.
Yeah.
So, and like Duncan Rhodes Painting Academy does the same thing. He'll tell you
Do you like his
exactly.
new painting academy?
Yes, because, and here's the specific reason, as a colorblind person, he gives you the exact color he's using by the
Yeah.
exact manufacturer.
Yeah.
So I know, and there's apps that I can convert that color to like brand that I might have if I don't have that
Right.
brand. So
Right.
I can get the closest to that color as I need to be. Because if
That's
I
great.
go off, if I go off on my own, I have been known to create blue horses before. So I was
Well, that could
painting
work
that.
for an AdMech army, mechanical horses.
Well, it was a natural live horse that I was trying to do, and I thought it
Oh,
was
okay.
gray, but no. My wife later told me no, it was blue. I'm like,
Oh.
oh, okay. So
Well, no, I think that'll be a very interesting aspect of your sessions. That's very cool.
yeah. Now the spider fang and grots themselves, squigs and grots and that army don't scare me for colors because that color could be crazy. It's our goblin, so I'm
Right.
not as worried about that.
Right.
Skin colors, I know what colors I could use on goblins, but their exteriors can be much more random. Um, the spiders, I have the colors already chosen. I found a spider I like in real life, and I'm going to be
Okay.
kind of working around that color. It's got a ladybug spider. It's black
Oh.
and red.
Oh, cool.
So
Yeah. I know that the squigs. I mean, you see people do squig armies. They look like just neon balls of teeth. I mean, you see all kinds of different colors. So
oh yeah, there's
that's definitely doable.
I don't know the name of the Lords and Hero member, but has been doing squigs. And he had the same idea as I have. Is that I'm doing units in different, just bright colors.
Yeah.
So
Right. Well, and I think it's great for your younger, for your daughter too. I mean, she can just go crazy and paint them any way she wants.
oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah.
That's fantastic.
I got a bunch of different contrast colors for her to use. She wanted pink ones for sure, so we got Vulpus pink or something like that. So
Right. Yeah, I was just using that today on my my Saurus Knights.
oh, all right. What color are
So,
they going to be?
so the Knight Riders, their underbelly skin tone is, I think the lighter purple color, and then the scales of the Vulpus pink, because the Vulpus pink is actually a darker color than the lighter purple. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's what they are. I just finished that today. I was hobbying on them for a couple 3 hours today, and I think I've got all the main colors laid down on the cold ones and the riders. I just have to finish their weapons and shields and stuff, and that unit should be pretty much ready for basing. I'm waiting for some basing to come in the mail.
I've got Saurus Warriors on my workbench that my son's been painting, but he wanted to make sure that the three special, the leader and the drummer and the banner bearer, he wanted me to paint.
Oh, okay.
He
And
wants
how old
them
is
to
he?
look nicer. He's 8.
8. Okay.
So
Oh, good for him.
He's
Picked a
working
great
on
army.
those. Yeah. No, I mean dinosaurs. I had to
Yeah.
make him. I had to really sell him on his 40K army to go with the orc speed freaks
Oh,
because I
well, but
really wanted vehicles to build.
yeah, I'll tell you what, that box game, that would be great for an 8-year-old. That Speed Freaks box
Yeah.
game.
Yep, that's what we
That's
got.
fantastic.
We got that game, and I got all the vehicles that came out at that time that they were cards were available.
Right.
So the game had all those cards. So I got all those specific vehicles. So we have, yeah, he's got 1,000 points of orc vehicles, and for me, because I came from a scale model background, that's going to scratch my itch that I haven't had building vehicles in a long while.
Right.
Something non-organic.
Right. Well, that'll be great. Also with your overlords, your Caradon.
Yeah, that was another thing. I'm
Yeah.
really excited to try out some different metallic colors from
Yeah. Yeah.
painting Stormcast and golds and bronzes from Corn and just
Right.
this. I'm gonna do 10 colors, and kind of
Oh, nice.
do some different darker metallics that aren't and make it used more worn out steampunk.
Cool. Well, Joel, thanks very much for helping us out with content on the Lords and Heroes Twitch feed. And I know that people will enjoy seeing you at twitch.tv/Lords and Heroes. So, Dan, thanks very much for being with me today. How you doing?
Doing great, dude.
I really appreciate you helping out with the Twitch feed and all that kind of stuff. And I just wanted to give our listeners a chance to kind of get to know who you are. So thanks for coming on.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So tell us kind of like the really short Reader's Digest version. I know you've been in the hobby for a long time, but what's the short version of how you got to where you are right now in the hobby?
Yes, I mean, I've been around the hobby, like you said, since like the late mid 90s. And where I got now is kind of, I would say, just based off of my friends and kind of the last several years. I've had friends in the hobby some friends for like 20 plus years, but really it's been within the last couple of years, taking the CK classes, getting them, finding a mentor in Caleb and the CK Studios, and then just also a little bit of my time as a GW manager, where I kind of rediscovered my love for teaching people about the hobby.
Yeah. How long ago was that?
I know. I was a manager for about 2 years, and I left about 10 months ago.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because I remember we had a great time in the CK class over at Heretic Games. It was you and Justin and Bill all sitting in a row there with the tunes going on in the corner. It was fun.
That was an awesome experience. I mean, taking those classes really for me, because I mean, like in the late 90s, dude, like early 2000s, it was just me. It was a very solitary kind of hobby experience, and you'd meet other people and you'd share techniques, but it's nothing like it is today, where you had like actual classes and people teaching you and people showing you what's going on and everything. It's very, very different.
Yeah, and it's great to have people. I mean, you can really get a sense that they love what they're doing and they love sharing it. It's not just a job. It's something that's they really enjoy sharing. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Right.
So what armies are you playing currently in Age of Sigmar?
Age of Sigmar, I have a massive Death Guard and Demons of Nurgle army.
Okay, so are you using the Nurgle guys in Age of Sigmar then?
Oh yeah, dude. And when those new Maggot Kingdom Nurgle came out, like I was all about it. So
yeah,
it was a no-brainer, dude. It was a no-brainer.
So are you doing a specific New Year New Army 2020 project or not?
Not yes and no, right? So I've been doing a lot of commission work lately.
Oh, okay.
So I've kind of been jumping around between different projects, which that's been a lot of fun. I recently did a Nurgle character for somebody based on like the color scheme and process for my own army, which is invigorating, right? It's like, oh man, I need to get back to that army. But I've also been talking to some friends about doing a big apocalypse game next year. And so we're talking about doing like 500 power level. And it's all 40K stuff, but we're talking about like entirely building brand new armies, 500 power level. There's a couple of people from Portland. There's a friend in Georgia, and there's some friends in Texas, and we're all just going to have this massive game. So
the friend in Georgia. Tell me it's not Eric.
No, absolutely, it's Eric. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All
he's
the
a
people
great
that
guy.
we do in the hobby chat. Yeah, no, he's awesome, dude. So I'm probably going to be doing. I'm kind of looking through the basement of opportunity and seeing what what armies I can pull out. But I'm thinking Custodes. I've got a Warhound Titan. I've got several Knights.
Okay.
So yeah, I think that's probably where I'm leaning.
And what about on the Age of Sigmar side? You're going to stay with the Nurgle?
Yeah, I want to stay with the Nurgle, but also I don't know if you saw that Urgul tutorial that I did with that really kind of pink flesh.
Oh yes.
Kind of based on Tyler Mengel's paint scheme, but that was like, dude, that was so much fun and it was so quick. And so I'm thinking Flesh Eater Courts might, that would be a great color scheme for them.
And so what got you interested in that? Just seeing Mangle stuff, or did you have an interest in that army to begin with?
It was the moment that I was like, wait a minute, you can take zombie dragons as battle line? I'm like, oh my god, I'm going to have 5 zombie dragons? That's amazing.
Well, it's funny because when I did the broadcast for the Age of Sigmar championships at Adepticon. I'm sorry, at Las Vegas Open. We were broadcasting doing the live cast, and the winner was playing Flesh Eater Courts right before the new book came out. So he was using the old book,
Right.
and it was
I remember
powerful
that.
even then. And the new book made him better, right?
Yeah. I mean, dude, like you've got giant dragons and like the whole lore. Like I love how they took the lore and they kind of grew it with Age of Sigmar and kind of dropped in these
Yeah.
little hints, like maybe they're from Bretonia, maybe not.
Don't even say that. I don't want to hear that. Don't say
I
that.
love it, dude. I love it.
No,
It's
I
so
hate that.
awesome. It's so awesome. And I won't lie, I've got a friend in LA who has this just absolutely stunningly painted Bretonian army, and like he's super salty because it's not as current as he'd like it to be.
Oh, tell me about it. I sold off my Bretonians for a song. It was my first Warhammer Fantasy army. I was so mad when they said we're not bringing that army back.
Yeah, they're back. They're just called Flesh Eater Courts now.
Yeah.
I love, dude. It's just, I mean, come on. They're like crazy ghouls and monsters.
It's a very interesting thing that they did in order to kind of keep them there, but not really have them there. Yeah, it was interesting. So, do you mind talking about your commission stuff for a minute? Because I know you have the Dan Osborne Studios thing. I see you at that on Facebook. You want to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah. So, I mean, I kind of started my art page, to be really honest, as kind of like just scratching that itch of like, I really love showing people how to do things. I really love doing tutorials and just like that's the thing I love most. And that's, as a manager, that's what I loved most about my job every day.
Right.
So that's kind of like a big part of my hobby page, D.Osborne, OZBORNE. That's a big part of it. It's just sharing tutorials, but I've also been doing commissions. People see my work. They saw the Chaos Nights that I did. They saw some of the Nurgle work and some of the other stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. Like, I love helping people. We're going to do some online teaching tutorials with CK Studios. That's in the work.
Right. I heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun, dude. It's I've done some like kind of remote, especially now with everybody home, right? I've done some remote teaching lessons with FaceTime, sending pictures and videos back and forth. So nothing like a Patreon, just kind of one-on-one type stuff.
Right.
I've done armies, I've done individual models, just kind of whatever people want to do. It's fun to do something different.
The Twitch session you did for us already, I mean, it was very clear that you enjoy kind of going over stuff and talking about how you're doing things and stuff like that.
I do. I really, really do. And it's not about like what am I really good at, and I'm going to like tell you my technique. It's about like finding where people are at, because that's what teaching is, right? Where are you at? What can I do to help you? And what can I do to take you to that next step, right? So that's kind of what I enjoy doing and helping people. And I'm not trying to, I'm not teaching you how to do a golden demon. How do you base coat your model? How do you get some basic techniques? How do you, one of the things I love about this hobby is all the different toys and all the different techniques and products.
Absolutely.
Right? So different kinds of dry brushes. Those Artist Opus brushes are awesome.
Yeah.
Enamel products like AK Interactive and Ammo by Mig. Those are super fun to work with too. Weathering powders, just all that stuff. I love trying out new toys and kind of teaching people how to use them too.
I mean, I've taken classes from other instructors at Adepticon and KublaCon and other places like that, and it was really interesting to see, like different airbrush instructors, how they approach it as opposed to how CK approaches it. And every class you can take something else away from it, and it's really cool because it's not about this is the right way to do it. It's just this is how I do it, and if it fits into how you do your hobby, then great.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's great too is like sometimes people like learning a technique or like bashing my head against the technique. Why isn't it coming out right? Why isn't it coming out right? Why isn't it coming out right? By doing that, you kind of teach yourself like all the steps of not to do, and then you kind of become a better teacher later on.
Yeah, process of elimination almost. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So I just love doing that.
That's cool. And do you play any games outside of 40K and Age of Sigmar?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely play a lot of 40K, Age of Sigmar, and all the related games. So like Warhammer Underworlds, I've got all the warbands. Kill Team is fantastic. I also really love Warcry. Like
Warcry, isn't that a great game?
Dude, like rolling a 6 is amazing. Yeah. It's so fantastic.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because this interview is going to be on the episode where we go into a deep dive into the rules for Warcry.
Yes.
And, we're talking about the initiative dice and the wild die and how it's such a cool mechanism that they put into the game. And how,
it's somewhat counterintuitive because at first glance, you're like, oh man, you just roll the hit and that's it, right?
Right.
So like maybe it's like an easy version. Like some rules are very much streamlined, but there's a lot of technique
Yeah.
and strategy in
Yeah.
terms of order of operation,
Yep.
how you're going to do your abilities, even just list building and which abilities kind of
Right.
stack or help with other characters. It's a
Exactly.
lot
Yeah.
deeper than people think.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. I agree.
And
So
dude, I love my Savage Works, like just screaming wah and talking like, a fool. Like it is so much fun, dude. It is.
it's
I
awesome.
don't care if I lose or win. I just scream and yell and roll
Yeah,
dice.
it's great. So you've already done one Twitch session for us. It's awesome. And so what is your kind of your overarching philosophy on the Twitch sessions? I know you kind of touched on it already, but just kind of when you go into these Twitch sessions, what's your kind of overarching philosophy?
I mean, again, dude, like everything I do, I just love sharing the things that I know and giving back to the hobby that means so much to me and has given so much to me. So I think what I'd like to do is just continue working with those Stormcasts, continue doing some base coats using those Opus brushes because they're kind of a new product and it's a different way of dry brushing using that moistening pad. I've always been like, just get some paint and just bash the model with a dry brush.
Right.
I would also like to do some weathering because weathering is something that I'm really fond of, like just making things look dirty and nasty, Nurgle stuff.
That's very
cool. I think
cool.
that's where I'm going to take it. I'll finish up that Stormcast Warband, get the base coats, kind of do some of the other stuff, and just weather the snot out of them, dude. Just make them look really beat and dirty.
That's cool. Yeah, I took a class from Duncan Rhodes at Adepticon, and they were doing. He called it wet brushing instead of dry brushing. That's how he described that technique where you use kind of the wetter paint.
Yeah, Justin does that too. Like I've been, dude. Like so, when I sat down to the CK 103 class where they do the knights, and Caleb's like, "Cool, we're gonna airbrush this." I'm like, "All right, cool. I knew this was coming. That's why I'm here." He goes, "Great. Now put your airbrush away. We're gonna dry brush." And I was like a little kid, dude. I was like, "Oh, this is amazing! Like I love dry brushing. It's easy. It's quick. And to take those two techniques and put them together,
right."
Yeah, dry brushing, it's just, and especially too, like having taught so many new people, brought so many new people into the hobby, it's something that if you show someone how to do it, like, dude, instantly, they can get some fantastic results. Yeah, I just love it. But I've never done that. I've never used that little wet kind of brush, moist brush with it. It's always been, dusty, not streaky, very light.
Right.
Just don't attack the model, but just be very, very soft with it.
Yeah, I mean, even what I used to do is just I would prime stuff black, and I would just dry brush a light gray over the whole thing, and in case I needed to play with them, just in case, because it was even just that would bring out details and stuff. And then I found a lot of times it was easier to go back in and do the details once you had it kind of pre-highlighted. It was almost like a
Zenithal.
Yeah, right, like a poor man's Zenithal. Yeah, exactly right.
Oh.
Yeah.
Dude, for years, that was actually like the foundation of every single model I painted. For like years, dude, I would dry brush from black all the way up to white. I would give it like 2 or 3 washes of Bad Eye Black to kind of pull it back down. And then cool, my black is done. And then any other colors, I just go in and do it.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, it's a fantastic technique. I love it.
Well, thanks so much for coming in and letting us know kind of who you are and kind of the background and what your plans are. So hopefully people will watch for you on twitch.tv/Lords and Heroes. And Dan, I want to thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, absolutely, Don. I thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Alrighty, the Scrying Pool, where we look into the future, gazing deep to see what is in the future and what may be pulling the money out of our wallets screaming. All right, Adan, what catches your eye?
Yeah, so I was expecting a May preview from GW. I thought they were going to do a May program, like one of the first 3. Mm-hmm. It doesn't look like they're going to do it.
Yeah, it's weird.
And last Sunday, normally on Sundays they'll preview when the world's normal. Mm-hmm. On Sundays they're showing what's coming out. We didn't really see that. We did see the endless spells from the Lumineth, but we didn't really see much else. The Mechanicum Cavalry, what the hell's up with those?
I have no idea, but if you've noticed preview-wise, I don't know if this is just me, but have they had the Realm Caller, the newspaper? Has that been popping up more and more lately?
It seems like it.
It seems like it's nonstop lately. Usually be like one article a week,
I think
maybe.
They're trying to catch up.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, the Mechanicum Cavalry, I'm like, I mean, if you were into Deathcore Krieg and you were mad you don't have those Rough Riders, I don't know. I don't know about the mechanical horses.
I like their flyer, but the horses made me kind of cock my head.
Yeah, I don't know.
There's only so much the Mechanicum should really weird out.
Yeah, I guess. The other thing I'm looking forward to is trying the Scale 75 Metallics I bought. Herrick Games was selling them. I was like, I got to grab those. And so they came in this week. I'm almost kind of scared, but I'm really looking forward to it.
Their Necro Gold is the smoothest gold I have ever used. It's the base for my Black Legion Gold.
Yeah, that's the set I bought when it has that.
It's so good.
Yeah. Have you tried any of the silvers?
I've used their equivalent of the bolt gun metal.
Uh-huh.
I'm not as big of a fan of it because usually with bolt gun metal, I'll use it to dry brush.
Oh,
and
right.
their paint doesn't seem to dry brush as well.
Okay.
Probably because it's a finer paint.
Right.
So
then apparently it's like super matte as well.
Yeah.
Right?
So I have used it just to paint on a little bit, and it works and it's great. But when I dry brush it or try to dry brush it, it doesn't hold that same
What
luster.
I tend to do with bolt gun is I'll use that as my base coat.
Yeah.
And then I'll wash it, and then I'll dry brush with like a silver.
Like a chainmail.
Yeah. And then so I'm not really kind of looking forward too much at other stuff. What about you?
For me, this is going to be controversial, ladies and gentlemen. I'm hardcore looking to the Lumineth, and especially the Cowboys.
Is that right?
Yep. I don't care what anybody says. Those guys are gorgeous. They're amazing. Persian and Mesopotamian mythology. It really caught my eye, those guys.
Right.
With those models.
Yeah, I think if you look at it in that context,
Yeah.
I mean, Justin calls them the disappointing elves.
I mean, he's entitled to his opinion, however wrong it is. But no lie, Justin. I'm a huge fan. Please don't kill me. But I love the Lumineth, especially the Light of Eltharion and his rules were just previewed. That was one of my favorite characters, top 5 favorite characters in Warhammer Fantasy.
The way that they evolved him.
Yes, from this uber arrogant prince down to being this blinded nobody who then became a warrior priest,
right?
And then gave his life trying to stop Nagash.
He's basically a wraith.
Yeah.
He's basically like a night haunt.
Yep, and his rules are insane.
Oh, are they really?
They are insane. He is so good. When that army comes out, I'm scared for what my finances are going to be. Especially they just released snippets on the web. Teclis is going to be a nightmare. He automatically casts his spells.
Right, but how many points is it going to be?
660.
Yeah, see, that's a lot.
Yeah, he's not. I hesitate to say anything is broken because I really love Age of Sigmar and find it to be very balanced usually.
But 660 points, I mean, you're paying a lot of points for that.
That's what I mean is I don't think he's broken. I think
Yeah.
once you see him on the field for 660 points, especially because it's an elven army
Yeah.
and everything else is probably going to be expensive.
Yeah,
it's not going to be horrifying, but he's...
look at Marathi.
Yeah, and wow, why am I forgetting her name right now? The
Aladrel,
goddess,
or what's her name?
Alariel, yeah, for the Sylvaneth.
Right.
She's insane. She's expensive as heck,
Right.
too.
Right.
So, yeah.
So I think the points are going to be good.
Yeah, I think you'll be
And,
fine.
the nice thing about the General's Handbook is if they decide that the points aren't right, they can fix it.
Genius move. I love
it. I absolutely love it. Well, all right. Well, not a lot of scrying going on there. I don't know.
The pool is dark.
So we can just kind of roll into our final thoughts. So what do we think about Warcry?
Okay, so this game is probably one of the biggest home runs they've ever hit, especially in recent memory. I've been with GW playing their games for about 16 years now.
Yeah.
I remember the dark days and even into the very happy days recently where the company has been very fantastic.
Right.
This game is up there with their greatest that they've ever released. It's a game that you can throw at a beginner and you're not going to lose them, and you open them into the world of Age of Sigmar.
Yes. Even more so than Underworlds.
Yeah, even more so than Underworlds, and even more so than for 40K Kill Team, which you've used to grab people before.
Right.
But it has that simplistic theme, and the thematic parts of it are what really grab, like jumping off buildings. And the game has such simple rules and brings such thematic narrative to those simple rules.
Right.
It's high stakes but low stress. It really grabs you that way.
I think that one of the things that's interesting about it being good for beginners and why I think they brought in a lot of newer game designers.
Yep.
Who have worked in the industry in other formats. And the thing with Necromunda and with Kill Team and with some of these other games, even Titanicus, they on some level had to feel kind of tied to what had come before.
Yes.
So they had to have echoes of what came before. Because
Yes.
Titanicus is a great game. But I think, Blitz Bowl, some of the other games, there has to be this echo of the old version, which I think kind of holds them back.
Yes.
Personal view. So if you look at this game, basically it's its own thing.
Yeah, it's new.
They didn't have to feel like, oh, we're redoing Mordheim, right? They could just do their own thing. So the initiative dice, the wild dice, the single roll attacks,
Yeah, the nostalgia tax isn't there.
The weight actions. I mean, all those things which basically you don't see in any other GW game. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, they don't have to hold it.
This is a whole new thing. It's in a whole new setting.
Yep.
It has whole new fluff. I mean, it echoes back to the other fluff, but but the lore is its own for its 6 core warbands, and they found I think a relatively elegant way of bringing in the existing warbands.
Yep.
So, in all ways, I think it's just a really, really good entry for those same things.
Yep.
I mean, Underworlds, I think, was directly aimed towards card players like Magic players.
Yep.
And board gamers because of the hexes. This one, I think this would be a really easy one to grab somebody who's played Malifaux, War Machine, any other skirmish game. They're going to come in and see the elegance of this and kind of go, oh, this is... I mean, you and I both played a lot of skirmish games.
Yep.
This is a pretty elegant rule set.
Yep. Any game that you hear people cheering on game day all over the place is something that you really got to root for.
Yeah. Now, for me, I think it can be very swingy.
Oh, yeah.
Depending on the cards. As I've said before, I had a game where I rolled my dice twice and won the game.
Yeah,
And so that can happen. But the nice thing about it is that the games are short.
Yep, time
It's
to
like,
re-rack.
okay, we're going to re-rack.
Yep.
Now, the bad thing for me in one instance, it was in a quote-unquote tournament.
So dumb.
Where people had paid money to enter, and, that's not fun.
No.
But if you're just playing to play, or if you're playing on a campaign track or whatever, you're like, woohoo, I just made a really quick track.
Yeah, right.
That's awesome. So I think it's, to me, the campaign is what basically takes us over the top.
Oh, yeah. That's
as you were saying, there's no reason not to play the campaign.
Yep.
It's portable, it's specific, and it's fun.
Hey, I don't have a game table at home, but I do have a kitchen table.
Right.
Anybody can do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, 22 by 30. It's awesome. All right. Well, that's kind of our thoughts on Warcry. Twitch.tv/Lords and Heroes is our Twitch channel. We have people doing hobby things on there. Joel and Dan were the last 2 folks on there. We're going to have other folks on there as well. If we don't have anything going and one of the other channels that we're subscribed to is going, it'll be playing on there. So check us out at Lords and Heroes, twitch.tv/Lords and Heroes. CK Studios is looking at how to live in the COVID world. They're looking at doing some online stuff. Justin kind of talked about that a little bit on the independent characters, and there was an interview with them on that show as well, talking about that. If you're into 40K, there's a little podcast out there called The Independent Characters. It's okay.
Yeah.
If you are into Blitz Bowl, that great game that we detailed in episode 12, look up The Crush. It's a really cool podcast all about Blitz Bowl. They do some really fun stuff on that show. Their key matchups and things like that, really fun stuff. Again, we're on Facebook. Join us on the Lords and Heroes Facebook community page. Teespring.com is where you get all your Lords and Heroes swag. And our contest. This is the last show for the contest. If you go to the show Facebook page, not the community page, but the actual Lords and Heroes podcast Facebook page, there's a link to the pub names that we use for the show. Like we're in the Death's Door Inn today. It has a Latin vibe. I heard the Macarena earlier. You might actually hear that in the background.
Nagash loves his music.
Suggest a name there. If it's selected as an appropriate name that we're going to use on the show, we're going to enter you in the drawing for a Lords and Heroes item from Teespring. And I want to thank who did it today's. I had it written down somewhere, and I apologize. I didn't get it at the beginning. And yeah, I don't see it written down, so I screwed that up. But yes, we got today's James Conway. That's who it was.
Yep.
Thank you.
Try to think up some good names, though, folks. They need to be good, bar none.
See, this is why I don't let Rob do it, because he would just start with one thing and then end up with 27 puns of the same thing.
It's beery depressing.
You know, it's funny. You didn't actually get into a lot of them today.
Warcry had my brain in it. It's that good.
Is that good?
Yep.
When it takes Rob out of his puns, you know it's good. All right. Well, that's it. Rob, I think it's time for me to go find a beer. I mean, maybe with a hand sanitizer chaser.
Yep. Just remember, Purell does a body good. I think it's time for my appointment with Dr. Pepper now that I'm done with my horchata.
All right. We'll talk to y'all later.
Lords and Heroes is protected under the Creative Commons license. If you have any questions about its use, you can go to lordsandheroes.com. Artwork is by valleydweller.com, and the music is courtesy of Jake Tejada. Sound effects are via freesound.com.